Night falls over the imperial palace, but things aren't exactly peaceful in this ancient drama. The courtyard looks like $1,000,000, but the vibes are definitely off. Red decorations are everywhere because someone's getting married, but the atmosphere feels way too heavy for a celebration. Guards are standing watch as the festivities kick off in the main hall. Inside, the wedding candles are burning bright, signaling a long night ahead for the newlyweds. A bride sits alone, draped in red, but she looks more like a prisoner than a lucky wife. Outside the palace walls, the gossip mill is running at full speed. A maid is busy flexing on the subordinates, telling them they better recognize who the real boss of the inner palace is now. One little servant dares to mention the lady living in Fengyi Palace, but gets shut down immediately. Apparently, the new favorite is the only daughter of a powerful general, making her basically untouchable. The emperor is essentially her father's biggest fan, so her promotion to empress is basically a done deal. As for the current queen, she's just a commoner with zero backing who has been blindsided by the new competition. Internally, the maid sneered, "She's so yesterday." The emperor is probably sending her to the cold palace as we speak. Cut to Fengyi Palace, which looks more like a ghost town than a royal residence. Our main girl, Ni Yunshang, is just chilling in her nightgown, looking like she hasn't slept in years. She asks her maid Kuer for the time and finds out it's already 9 p.m. She wonders if it's finally time for the emperor to drink the traditional wedding wine with his new toy. Seeing the wedding setup reminds her of her own happily ever after that turned into a total scam. Flashback to the day she married her brother Yi, the emperor who promised her the world. He literally swore a solemn oath that she would be his one and only woman forever. Yunshang was totally blinded by love and actually believed his lies. Little did he know, she actually gave up her entire future to stay by his side. Years ago, a literal interdimensional portal opened up right in front of her, offering her a way back to the modern world. She realized if she didn't walk through it, she'd be stuck in this era for another 20 years. But she was caught in 4K by her own feelings, because she had a new family and a man she loved for the first time. The emperor looked like a total snack back then, and she couldn't bring herself to leave him. Even though she knew she didn't belong in this time period, she thought of how anxious her parents would be back home. She was about to leave until she clutched her stomach and realized she was pregnant. Internally, she had a total meltdown, wondering if she could really let her child grow up without a father. She chose to stay, effectively trapping herself in this historical drama. Back then, the emperor actually stood up for her, making her queen despite everyone's protests. He made it look like the entire country existed just to protect her. He even made her promise never to leave his sight. She essentially ghosted her parents in the modern world for this guy, apologizing for being an ungrateful daughter. The portal finally closed, leaving her completely stranded. She watched her last ticket home shrink into nothingness. From that moment on, she decided this ancient world was her only home. Fast forward to the outskirts of town where a massive mansion stands in the dead of night. A silver-haired young master arrives with his servant, hearing rumors that his property is basically a horror movie set. The servant explains that weird noises have been coming from the place for a month. Apparently, candles light themselves and ghost flames have been scaring the living daylights out of everyone. The staff all quit, leaving the servant only brave enough to clean during the day. The young master just smirks, thinking he's about to debunk some fake ghosts. He pushes the door open, ready to catch the squatter in the act. The servant tries to hold him back, terrified that they're about to get cursed. The young master isn't having it and tells the old man to stay outside if he's that afraid. He marches in alone while the servant follows behind, shaking in his boots. Deep inside the mansion, someone is actually living their best life. A hand reaches out through the steam, looking way too solid to be a ghost. It turns out Yunshang has been using the place as a private spa, enjoying a hot bath like a total boss. She's been scaring people off with simple parlor tricks, because she was sick of living in a dusty, dilapidated temple. But her relaxation is cut short when the young master sneaks up on her. He's got that main character energy and a smirk that he's found exactly what he was looking for. He catches her completely off guard in the middle of her bath. Yunshang spins around, realizing her secret hideout has been compromised. She quickly grabs a robe to cover up. She tries to make a break for it, her hair flying everywhere as she attempts a world-class escape. The servant is confused by the sudden commotion. Yunshang realizes she's being hunted and tries to bolt out the door. Too late, the young master is faster and grabs her right by the throat. He mocks her, asking if Miss Ghost is satisfied with her new digs now that her skin is warm and definitely not spectral. Yunshang isn't going down without a fight and smashes a smoke bomb on the floor. The room explodes in light, blinding the young master instantly. By the time the smoke clears, she's already vanished into thin air. The young master is actually impressed that a squatter managed to outmaneuver him and escape his mansion. Outside, Yunshang is running for her life, thanking her lucky stars she had one blinding bullet left. She celebrates her escape, thinking no one can catch her when she's in speedrun mode. Internally, she lamented, "That bed was so comfy. I really don't want to go back to sleeping on a straw mat." Just then, a little girl stops her at the temple, crying and begging for help for her sister. The kid explains that a local rich kid, Counselor Lee's son, kidnapped her sister and the parents were beaten black and blue trying to get her back. Yunshang puts on her serious face and tells the girl to go gather intel on what's been happening at the Lee household. The girl is a natural spy and quickly finds a friend working inside the mansion to help. Turns out the counselor has been cheated in business and his son almost got his skull beaten in over a girl. Yunshang gets a devious look in her eye because she's got a perfect idea. She tells the kid it's time for a rescue mission. They arrive at the Lee mansion, looking like they're ready to do some business. parentless. Yunshang is in full priest disguise, telling the counselor that his forehead is looking suspiciously dark. She leans in, telling him that darkness has been plaguing him lately. The old man is totally hooked and begs for more info. She points around, claiming the house is infested with evil spirits that arrived no more than 10 days ago. She asks if he can recall any event that might have brought the bad vibes here. The counselor tries to act innocent, claiming he's a saint who never hurt a fly. His assistant whispers that all the bad luck started right after the young master brought home that new woman. Yunshang plays along, asking to see this suspicious person immediately. They head to the back of the property, walking through the dark gardens. Yunshang pretends to sense massive evil energy in the area. The counselor is fully convinced he's found the source of his problems. They unlock a shed and find the sister tied up and gagged inside. Yunshang immediately blocks the counselor, claiming the girl is possessed by a demon that's eating his luck. She tells him she needs to take the girl away to perform a banishment ritual with her powers. The little girl helps her sister out, telling her to stay quiet while they make their move. The counselor is just happy to be rid of the curse, and thanks the priest for her help. But Yunshang isn't done yet. She says she needs to investigate the rest of the mansion for lingering spirits. Internally, she's fuming. Counselor Lee's son is a piece of trash, and I'm going to take revenge for every girl he assaulted. She looks around the mansion, her eyes burning with justice. She spots a massive building and realizes it's the son's private quarters. She's ready to knock him out and beat him to a pulp for what he did. She pulls out a blowpipe and prepares to drug the guy into a deep sleep. She creeps into the room, moving like a total ninja. She spots someone sleeping under the covers and prepares her attack. The room is dead quiet as she approaches the bed. She thinks about all the misery this guy has caused and gets her fist ready. She lunges forward, aiming to beat him to a pulp. Suddenly, a hand shoots out and grabs her wrist midair. Yunshang is completely blindsided, realizing her target wasn't as asleep as she thought. The person in the bed flips the script and pins her down instantly. She finds herself staring right into the eyes of the silver-haired young master from the other mansion. It looks like our girl just walked right into a trap, and she's caught in 4K by the one person she didn't want to see again. Shay leans in with a smirk, asking if she's playing hard to get since she was sent there specifically to serve him. Our girl isn't having it and tells him to go to hell. She decides to end the conversation early by aiming a savage knee right for his crotch. Shay dodges the low blow like a pro. She thinks she sees a gap and decides now is her chance to strike. She lunges forward and grabs his arm, but instead of a takedown, she loses her footing and they both go tumbling. They end up in a compromising position, staring into each other's eyes. Outside, the local lord is worrying if the guest from the capital is being disturbed. He's stressed because he spent a fortune on a retired imperial chef just to get this guy to stay. He decides to check in and slowly pushes the door open. He catches them pinned together and immediately short-circuits. Internally, she's screaming because this looks incredibly suspicious. She tries to protest, but her face says it all. The lord slams the door shut, convinced the guest bends that way, and prefers being on the bottom. He's actually relieved, figuring this is why the guest rejected every beautiful woman he sent his way. He laughs it off while the lord asks if she's performing some kind of weird spirit-cleansing ritual. Thinking fast, she points at Shay and claims he's the source of a massive concentration of demon spirits. Shay just gives her a deadpan look, realizing she's a little liar who loves playing tricks. He approaches her, asking if he really feels like a demon to her. He grabs her wrist to keep her from bolting. He leans in close, testing her resolve with a smug grin. She struggles to break free, internally complaining that this fox spirit has way too much power. The lord tries to de-escalate, explaining that Shay is a distinguished guest who has never even met this supposed demon girl. Shay gets curious and asks to hear more about this demon girl. She starts sweating, realizing this sly fox isn't as easy to fool as the others. She pokes him in the chest, claiming a demon might have possessed him without him even knowing. Shay plays along, mentioning he hasn't seen demons, but he has seen a ghost woman. She looks at him like he's a total airhead, thinking he's all money and no brains. Internally, she scoffs, "Ghosts don't exist, buddy. But thanks for the easy payday." They head downtown to investigate. She asks where exactly this ghost woman is supposed to be. Shay explains he has an empty mansion on the west side where he caught a glimpse of her. Her heart stops as she realizes he's describing the night she was sneaking around. She figures she's safe since she was dressed as a woman then and a priest now. She makes a quick excuse to go, prepare, and promises to meet him at the mansion. Shay watches her run off, finding her suspicious behavior interesting. Later, on the outskirts of town, she's still fuming about that sly fox. She stops for a moment, sensing something is off. Suddenly, she trips over something and takes a hard faceplant. She sits up, wondering what the hell just tripped her. She looks down and finds a small figurine in her hand. She gives it a quick bite to check the material. It's pure gold, and she immediately starts celebrating her sudden wealth. She stuffs the loot into her robe and prepares to head out. The sound of bells and hooves stops her in her tracks. A cold voice demands she hand over the tiger token immediately. Standing before her is the great General Eric Jiang, looking like he's ready to start a war. He stares her down with terrifying intensity. She plays dumb, asking what tiger token he's talking about. She swears she hasn't seen a thing. The general doesn't buy it and orders his men to search her. Realizing she's caught in 4K, she stops them. She slowly pulls out the gold tiger figurine. The soldiers decide she must be working with the thieves they've been hunting. The general gives her a chilling stare. Before she can explain, she's hauled off and tossed into a dungeon. She grips the bars, wondering what she did to deserve this. In a peaceful palace garden, the atmosphere is much more refined. We meet Skylar Yun, the emperor's strategic advisor. He calmly announces that the princess has finally returned. Prince Regent Andreas Taishu enters, asking if the news is actually true. Skylar explains the princess went missing 15 years ago because her soul was hidden by a being from another world. Now that the other soul is gone, the true princess princess has reappeared. Andreas looks deeply troubled by the news. He asks what happened to the soul from the other world. He admits he only tolerated her existence because she was the one who gave birth to the princess. Skylar tells him to go fetch her, noting that the great general currently has her imprisoned. Back in the general's dungeon, the chains are clanking. Our girl is looking absolutely exhausted. She's tied up and being interrogated about her accomplices. She pleads for them not to hit her, promising to talk. She claims her name is Pearl Nee and insists the whole thing is a misunderstanding. The general is losing his patience, demanding she tell the truth. He's fuming, thinking she's still trying to play him. He warns her that making fun of an imperial official is a one-way ticket to a death sentence. He looks ready to snap. She's left alone in her cell, sobbing over her terrible luck. Suddenly, Andreas walks into the dungeon. He looks at her and apologizes for being late. She's so overwhelmed that she just closes her eyes and passes out. Later that night, the moon hangs over the palace. She's resting in a lavish room behind silk curtains. Her back is covered in bandages from the whipping she received in the dungeon. She's out cold, completely unaware of her surroundings. Skylar enters the room silently. He stands over her bed with a cold, analytical expression. He approaches her slowly. He reaches out and removes the covers. He holds his fingers over her wounds and begins to channel his power. The scars on her back literally start to melt away. He glows with a soft, divine light. His touch begins to heal her skin perfectly. In her sleep, she mumbles that it feels nice and the burning sensation is gone. The light eventually fades from the room. Skylar stands up, his job finished. She wakes up and sees him, asking if he's some kind of saint. Instead of answering, he flicks his wrist and forces her to collapse back into sleep. She falls back onto the pillow, out like a light. Andreas is waiting outside in the courtyard. He's holding a bottle of medicinal cream, but Skylar tells him it's useless now. He informs the prince that he has already healed her. Andreas is surprised, noting that such kindness is very unlike him. Skylar simply says he wants the coronation to go smoothly tomorrow. Late that night, the palace is quiet. She's still tucked away in the massive bed. She suddenly jolts awake, screaming that the prison and whippings scared her to death. She checks her back and is shocked to find no wounds at all. She looks around, completely lost. Internally, she scoffs. This place is way more decadent than that mansion I was gonna rob. Suddenly, a group of maids enters, bowing and calling her Your Majesty. She's completely blindsided and can only manage a confused, huh? They tell her they need to help her change, but she tells them to keep their hands off her clothes. Andreas is waiting patiently for the reveal. She finally emerges, dressed in stunning imperial robes. The transformation is incredible. Andreas stares at her, thinking she's the spitting image of her mother. She immediately ruins the moment by yelling at him. She tells him that if he wants his money back, he can forget it because she doesn't have 2 coins to rub together. Andreas is unimpressed, telling her she's picked up some deplorable habits while away. She gets fired up, ready to throw hands. Andreas ignores her tantrum and mentions the general wants to apologize in person. She scoffs and waves him off, but when she sees General Eric, she immediately hides behind Andreas. The general admits his ignorance led to a grave mistake. He bows deeply, begging for her forgiveness. She shouts from behind Andreas that being ignorant doesn't give him a pass to beat people. Eric looks up at her with those intense red eyes. He stands back up. He offers to give himself 100 lashes as punishment to satisfy her. Andreas looks at her, remarking that she's got some nerve offending the general the moment she arrives. He stares her down, dead serious. He drops the final bombshell. Tomorrow, she is ascending the throne. Our girl is left completely short-circuiting, having no idea what he's talking about. The throne room is decked out in gold, looking completely extra for the royal occasion. Pearl is shaking in her boots, wondering how a simple tug on her sleeve led to this level of insanity. Skylar doesn't give her a choice, bluntly telling her it's time to take the seat and own her new life. Her hands are trembling as she adjusts her royal robes, internally screaming about how she's a total fraud. He practically escorts her up the steps, making sure she doesn't trip on her own sudden importance. Finally, she takes the seat, looking every bit the part with a train long enough to cover a football field. The court officials bow down, officially recognizing her as the new empress. Internally, Pearl's brain is short-circuiting as she thinks, what the hell is even happening right now? She remembers him saying she'd ruin the empire, and honestly, she's starting to think he was right. She tries to keep a straight face, but the what now? Vibes are incredibly strong. Just as things get official, the doors burst open for a surprise guest, concubine Dowager Nephiel and Prince Joe. Nephiel looks like she's ready to start a riot, calling the whole ceremony preposterous. She's not pulling any punches, screaming that a bastard usurper is on the throne while her son is right there. Little Prince Joe just looks confused, probably wishing he was literally anywhere else but this drama. Skylar tells her to zip it, reminding everyone that Pearl is actually Princess Elena, the true heir. Nephiel is visibly shaken, realizing her rival's daughter has actually returned from the dead to haunt her. She lets out a creepy laugh, mocking the name Elena. To her, the name is too flashy compared to her son's plain old Joe, and she accuses the late emperor of playing favorites. A flashback reveals Joe was the result of a drunken mistake with a maid, making him the ultimate plan B. Nephiel is biting her lip in pure, unadulterated rage. She grips Joe's hand way too tight, making it clear she's using the kidon for power. She doubles down, arguing that a woman is unfit to rule compared to a legitimate male heir. Pearl just watches the drama unfold, wondering who's going to be the last one standing in this toxic mess. Internally, she's vibing with the chaos, thinking, this is better than any soap opera, I just need some popcorn. Skylar drops the ultimate mic drop, revealing that Pearl is the Destiny star, and asking if anyone is brave enough to question his authority. He stands tall, acting as Pearl's human shield while she hides behind him like a pro. Nephiel is stunned, wondering why the guy who supposedly retired is back in the game and simping for the new Empress. Skylar's face is cold as ice as he stares her down. He threatens to spill all the dirty laundry right there in front of the court if she doesn't back off. Nephiel realizes she's been checkmated and that there's no way out of this situation. Prince Joe is over the drama and tells his mom he just wants to go home to his toys. Realizing she's lost this round, Nephiel decides it's time to dip before things get worse. Pearl watches them leave, unimpressed by how easily the villain folded. She looks at the situation like a video game, realizing she's a level 0 noob trapped in an SSS difficulty instance with 3 super bosses. Still, she's got that main character energy and is ready to start plotting her own survival in this den of snakes. Night falls over Peace Palace, but the vibes are anything but peaceful for our reluctant ruler. A maid gets Pearl ready for bed, but the girl is clearly deep in thought about her survival chances. As the maid removes her heavy gold headpiece, the weight of the crown feels all too real. The drawer is stuffed with enough jewelry to buy a small country, but Pearl isn't impressed by the shiny bait. Suddenly, Skylar walks in and the maid quickly makes herself scarce to avoid the tension. He looms over Pearl, asking why she stopped her nightly routine. He pulls out a wooden comb like he actually knows what he's doing with hair. He starts brushing her hair, but the romantic atmosphere is absolutely non-existent. He ends up snagging a knot so hard that Pearl lets out a literal scream of pain. She turns around, annoyed, and asks what he's even doing in her room at this hour. He just stares at the comb, realizing he's absolutely terrible at being a hairstylist. He tells her she needs to start acting like an empress and use the royal we instead of I. Then he decides it's time for a history lesson on why the palace is such a mess. He explains that the late emperor only had Prince Joe, who was basically a pity adoption from a maid. Pearl thinks the late emperor sounds like a total loser who probably died of misery. Skylar reminds her that the pathetic man was actually her father, and Pearl is not having it. She points a finger at him, yelling that even beggars have more dignity than to listen to these lies. Skylar drops the lore. She was born Elena Chen, and everyone thought she died in a palace fire 15 years ago. Pearl thinks the fire sounds super sus and suspects some serious foul play. She wonders if taken out of the palace is just code for being kidnapped by a rival. Internally, she imagines a tragic backstory where Skylar snatched her away just to spite the emperor. Skylar ignores her drama and tells her she needs to learn how to be a good empress. He mentions he's found her a teacher who also happens to be a candidate for a royal consort. Pearl's jaw drops as she realizes there's a whole harem of candidates waiting for her. Pearl tries to play it cool, saying she literally just got the job and it's way too early for a boyfriend. She starts fidgeting, trying to find any excuse to dodge the marriage trap he's setting. Skylar explains that the lack of hears is exactly why the court is full of snakes and invaders. He gets uncomfortably close, telling her she needs to produce an heir ASAP to keep the bloodline going. Internally, Pearl groans, "I knew there was no such thing as a free lunch in this palace." She remembers her master saying guys like Skylar are always the secret villains in TV dramas. She's convinced he's going to use her as a baby-making machine and then off her once the kid is born. In her mind, she's just a puppet for his grand plan to rule from the shadows. She starts panicking, picturing herself as a hapless empress about to be deleted. She tries to say no, but Skylar tells her the matter is already settled. He's already handpicking a lineup of guys for her to choose from like a royal dating show. He tells her she can make the choice after she meets them, which doesn't make her feel any better. He finally gives her a good night and prepares to leave her to her thoughts. As soon as he's gone, Pearl's mask clips and she's absolutely fuming at her lack of agency. But he stops at the door, dropping the bombshell that the first candidate arrives tomorrow. Pearl fakes a smile and waves him goodbye, laughing like a maniac to hide the massive stress. Skylar just sighs, probably wondering if he picked the right girl for this dangerous job. Pearl faceplants onto the bed, completely exhausted by the imperial life. She knows every guy Skylar picks will be a spy for him, so she vows to stay far away from them. She's determined not to let his badger games fool her into becoming a victim. Meanwhile, over at Tranquil Palace, Nephiel is having a total meltdown and smashing every vase in sight. She's swearing that someone will pay for humiliating her, and that Skylar knows the truth about Joe. She's spiraling, realizing the late emperor was just as indifferent to her as Skylar is now. She feels like a joke, realizing she spent years raising a bastard prince just to curry favor. She collapses on the floor among the shards of her broken plans and her pride, but then she wipes her tears and tells her servant to bring in her brother. Great General Eric Jiang walks in, and she greets him like they're the best of friends. It's been a minute since they've seen each other, and the tension in the room is high. Eric is all business, asking what she wants from him this time. She plays the victim card, complaining that their parents abandoned her and now her brother is being cold too. She tries to guilt-trip him into doing her a favor, cause she's his big sister. Eric isn't buying the act, calling her request absolutely ridiculous. She gets desperate, saying she thought Joe would bring glory to their family. She argues that if the new princess stays on the throne, all their hard work was for nothing. Eric shuts her down, saying his only job is guarding the border and she needs to stop plotting. Nephiel's grip on his arm tightens as she realizes she's losing her only backup. up. She lets out a dark laugh, asking if he really thinks she can just quit after 15 years. She rants about how she wasted her youth in a loveless marriage for the sake of the Jiang family. She screams that if the family gives up on her, her suffering was completely pointless. Eric tells her she just needs to let it go and move on with her life. She plays her final card, saying she has nothing left to live for and might as well join the late emperor. Eric is disgusted, asking if she really wants him to stay in the palace as a breeding stallion for her plans. She doesn't blink, insisting the next emperor must carry Jiang blood to protect them. She starts sobbing against him, pulling out all the stops for emotional manipulation. Eric closes his eyes, clearly reaching his breaking point with her constant demands. He finally gives in and says okay, giving her exactly what she wants to hear. He walks out of the room, looking like a man who just sold his soul to a demon. Nephiel's maid asks if the general will actually do it, and Nephiel smirks. She reveals that their mother's deathbed promise is the leash she's using to control him. The maid asks what happens if the empress actually has the general's kid. Nephiel's face turns demonic as she calls Pearl nothing but a bastard who doesn't belong. Her plan is simple. Get the heir, then dispose of the bastard empress for good. Cut to a victory celebration where the soldiers are cheering for liberating Yanchester City. Everyone is drinking and celebrating the general's massive success on the battlefield. Eric is chugging his drink, but he's clearly not in the mood to party. His men are hyping him up, saying the enemy ran away just hearing his name. They want to keep the momentum going and invade even more neighboring cities. They shout, "Long live the general," but Eric just stares into space, lost in thought. He suddenly smashes his jar on the ground, shocking everyone into silence. The room goes dead silent as the soldiers watch their leader with confusion. Eric looks completely drained, the weight of his sister's favor crushing his spirit. He turns his back on the party and walks out into the rain, looking like a man with no future. Night falls over the imperial palace. But for some, the drama is only just beginning. General Eric is currently having a midlife crisis, feeling like a caged eagle forced to rot in this filthy place. He's fuming about being stuck here, breaking his wings just to satisfy his brother's political games. Eventually, he finds himself outside the Peace Palace, knowing exactly where the young empress is hiding. Instead of knocking like a normal person, he decides to pull a full stealth mission and climbs through the window. With a look that screams he's about to make a very questionable decision, he stares down his target. Inside, Pearl is actually getting some decent shut-eye for once. She looks surprisingly peaceful, completely unaware that a massive, disgruntled general is looming over her bed. Eric looks conflicted, his red eyes darting around the dark room. Pearl slowly blinks open an eye, realizing she has a late-night visitor. She quickly shuts her eyes again, hoping if she ignores him, he'll just despawn. Internally, she groaned. Seriously, what does this guy want at this hour? Eric reaches out a hand, looking ready to stir up some major trouble. He leans in close, thinking about how easy it would be to just end her right here and solve all his problems. Pearl feels his hand near her throat and immediately connects the dots. Internally, she scoffed. Is he still salty about those 100 lashes? Get over it, buddy. To throw him off, she starts fake talking in her sleep, screaming about needing air and drowning. The sudden outburst startles Eric so bad he practically jumps out of his skin. He's clearly not sober, clutching his head and wondering where the heck he even is. He loses his balance, staggering like he just left a 5-hour happy hour before finally face-planting. He lands right on top of Pearl with a heavy oof, catching her completely off guard. Pearl stares up at him, only to hear him mumble about wanting more wine while his face is inches from hers. He's out cold and Pearl is stuck under a literal human mountain. Internally, she shrieked, "Get this drunk tank off me before I actually suffocate." With a massive shove, she rolls him off the bed with a satisfying thump. Eric just lies there on the floor, still dreaming about his next bottle of booze. Pearl takes a breath, realizing she just dodged a literal assassination attempt because the assassin was too wasted to function. Suddenly, a devious idea pops into her head, and she realizes it's time for some legendary payback. Her maids show up and see the general on the floor, looking like they just caught their boss in 4K. They start teasing her, asking if she's already picked her favorite consort and noting the general isn't as sturdy as he looks. Pearl tells them to get their minds out of the gutter because she has work for them. She whispers her master plan, and it's definitely going to be embarrassing. One maid tries to protest the pettiness, but Pearl reminds her exactly who is wearing the crown around here. Cut to the next scene, and someone is waking up under a cherry blossom tree in the middle of the streets. It's Eric, and he's looking suspiciously like a beauty from a distance. A local creep spots him and thinks he's hit the jackpot. The guy starts getting handsy, lifting Eric's chin and offering to see more. Eric's eyes snap open, and he is 100% not in the mood for this. He delivers a swift punch that sends the creep flying into another dimension. Eric watches the guy spiral away, probably wondering why he's being called a bitch by a random drunk. He realizes his clothes are hanging open and he's feeling way too much breeze in places he shouldn't. He scratches his head, trying to piece together the absolute disaster that was his night. He's sitting there in a pile of petals, looking like the lead in a very confused historical drama. Morning hits the palace and the hangover is real. Eric can't remember a single thing, which is probably for the best for his mental health. He looks down and realizes he's essentially dressed in a lacy nightgown. The horror sets in as he realizes he's been played by the woman he was trying to intimidate. Back at the Peace Palace, Pearl is having the best morning ever, stretching and imagining his reaction. Internally, she cackled. "Hope you like the new look, General." Consider it a gift. Meanwhile, the city is popping off because the nation's top scholar has arrived. The trumpets are blaring and the crowd is going wild for the celebrity arrival. Everyone is making way for the big man on campus. Enter Alvis Su, the top scholar who looks like he walked straight out of a skincare commercial. He gives the crowd a winning smile that probably has a high body count. The locals are gossiping about how he's not just a genius, but also the sole grandson of the prime minister. Fangirls are literally throwing themselves at his horse, begging for a marriage proposal. He just keeps smiling, looking like the ultimate main character. Girls are screaming and waving in the streets just from a single glance. One girl actually hits the deck, claiming he's too dazzling to handle. Watching this from a balcony, another handsome guy is definitely not impressed. This is Master Shay, and he thinks everyone down there is a total fool. He's got his own harem of girls clinging to him, asking if he's been bewitched by Alvis too. One girl feeds him grapes, swearing they only have eyes for him. They call him a rascal and shower him with love, but he's basically a human iceberg. His buddies laugh, calling him the ultimate ladies' man even if he is one of the twin stars of the capital. Shay tells them to shut up because he hates being compared to that guy. Suddenly, the top courtesan Jasmine makes a grand entrance through the beads. She's a certified 1010 and the most wanted woman in the capital. She looks at Shay with puppy dog eyes, asking why he hasn't visited her lately. The other girls are immediately pressed, looking ready to start a catfight over him. Jasmine literally drops to her knees, whimpering for his attention. She begs him for just a moment of his time, looking completely heartbroken. Shay gives her a look that's colder than a winter in the north. He just gets up and walks away, leaving her on the floor in total shock. Jasmine starts crying, wondering how anyone could be this cruel to her. Shay's friend notes that he's just broken another heart like it's a daily hobby. Shay sighs, admitting he's just bored with the whole scene. He looks back at the girls he's leaving behind with zero regrets. He tosses a handful of expensive jewelry behind him as a reward for their time. The girls are immediately distracted by the shiny loot, thanking him as they head out. His friend is floored, noting that jewelry costs thousands, but Shay just shrugs it off as just money. They mention how Jasmine never responded to anyone else, but Shay captured her heart in one go. His buddy is practically fanboying over his legendary riz. Shay just smirks, claiming he was simply born this way, but then a dark smile creeps onto his face. His friend brings up the new empress, who came from outside the palace. He suggests Shay should try his luck and see if he can charm the woman on the throne. Shay touches his chin, his eyes lighting up with a dangerous new interest. He wonders if he'd actually make the empress fall head over heels for him. Challenge accepted, he says, looking like he's finally found a new toy. His friends immediately start betting high stakes, offering horse stables and hot spring resorts if he wins. One friend bets that Shay might actually meet his match with the empress. Shay just scoffs, offended that they'd even doubt his skills. He figures he's just scored some free real estate. He's so confident that he bets 20 of his capital storefronts if he somehow loses. His friend asks if he's worried about getting his heart stolen. Shay just laughs it off, asking what heart? He's ready to play the ultimate game of seduction, and the empress is his next target. Life in the palace was finally looking up, and Pearl decided to spend her afternoon vibing in the imperial garden. She was busy playing a high-stakes game of hide-and-seek with her maids, laughing as she dodged through the cherry blossoms. Since she was playing for keeps, she kept her blindfold tight to prove she wasn't cheating. She finally managed to corner someone and grabbed onto their waist with a triumphant grin. Internally, she cheered, "Gotcha. Is it Flora or Michelle? I'll have to feel around to find out." She reached up with a steady hand to identify her prize, but as soon as she touched his face, she realized this definitely wasn't one of her maids. The man looked down at her with a face of pure, unadulterated judgment. Pearl ripped the blindfold off and nearly short-circuited when she realized she'd just groped the imperial advisor. Skylar wasn't there to play games and immediately started lecturing her about her lack of a sense of duty. Pearl wasn't buying it, thinking that working hard was basically a one-way ticket to a stressful death. Internally, she scoffed, "You should be thanking me. If I actually tried, I'd be your biggest problem." To her, acting like a useless airhead was the ultimate survival strategy in this snake pit. Just as the tension was peaking, a new challenger appeared among the blossoms. This was Alvis Su, the nation's top scholar and basically the smartest guy in the room. Pearl was immediately blindsided by his top-tier visuals and gentle vibes. Internally, she squealed, "He has such a soft smile. I'm a total sucker for a nice smile." Skylar announced that Alvis would be her new personal tutor starting immediately. Pearl suddenly decided that maybe school wouldn't be so bad. She got to look at him all day. They relocated to the Imperial Study to get down to business. Alvis did no time pulling out the curriculum. He walked in carrying a stack of books tall enough to crush a small child. Pearl watched him, still feeling like she was trapped in some high-quality shoujo dream. Then he dropped the bomb. She had to master everything from the art of war to music and history. He even added math to the list, which was a total deal-breaker. To start, he wanted to see her calligraphy skills by having her write the name of the country. Pearl did her best, but the result looked like a chicken had a stroke on the paper. Alvis looked at the mess and looked like he was reconsidering his entire career. Pearl laughed it off, claiming her hand just gets a mind of its own when she holds a brush. She offered to try again, her hand visibly trembling from the pressure. Alvis decided to take the hands-on approach and reached for her. He stood behind her and guided her hand, his calm presence filling the room. As they wrote together, Pearl could hear her own heart thumping like a drum. Internally, she noted, "He smells amazing. Is that his actual scent or just expensive shampoo?" He showed her the finished product and told her she needed to practice hard. Internally, she blushed, thinking that seeing him write her name made her feel all sorts of ways. Suddenly, a realization hit her like a freight train. If Skylar assigned him, he was definitely a consort candidate. Internally, she was already planning their future together. She started daydreaming about Alvis coming to her bed at night in a very low-effort robe. She was so lost in the sauce that she started drooling right at the desk. Alvis called out to her, jolting her back to the real world. She realized she had ink smeared all over her face and felt like a total clown. Alvis didn't even laugh, he just reached into his robes for a handkerchief. He leaned in close and started wiping the ink off her cheek with extreme gentleness. Pearl felt a wave of guilt wash over her for thinking such unspeakable things about such a nice guy. To distract herself, she went into beast mode and practiced her writing until the table was covered in scrolls. 2 hours later, Alvis told her it was time to take a break before she passed out. Pearl dropped her brushes, energy completely spent. Her wrist was absolutely throbbing from the overexertion. Alvis checked her hand, noting that she'd definitely pushed herself too far. After he left, Pearl watched his retreating figure, still a bit dazed. She decided to head back to the garden to clear her head and listen to the birds. The cherry blossoms were catching the breeze as she walked along the path. She eventually found herself standing on a bridge overlooking the massive palace lake. 2 birds were vibing on a nearby branch, completely unaware of the drama. Pearl took a deep breath, enjoying the rare moment of peace. But she wasn't alone. Eric was watching her from a distance with a serious expression. Suddenly, a pair of suspicious eyes locked onto her back. Before she could react, she was blindsided by a shove. Pearl went flying over the railing, catching a glimpse of a mysterious figure. She tumbled through the air, completely helpless. She hit the water with a massive impact, disappearing beneath the surface. Panic set in as she realized she had zero swimming skills. She thrashed around, coughing and gasping for air as the water filled her lungs. She started to sink, her vision blurring as the light from the surface faded. Her hand reached up one last time before she went completely under. Eric saw the whole thing and dove into the lake without a second thought. He moved through the water like a professional, closing the distance in seconds. Back on the shore, everything was suspiciously quiet. A small kid stood there, shaking and insisting that it wasn't his fault. Underwater, Pearl was drifting deeper into the dark abyss. Her eyes fluttered shut as her consciousness began to slip away. Internally, she prayed for anyone to come and save her. Just as she was about to give up, her body began to go limp. Suddenly, a strong hand reached out and grabbed her. Eric pulled her into his arms, holding her tight against his chest. He looked at her pale face and realized she wasn't breathing. He leaned in, but it wasn't a romantic moment. He was desperately trying to give her air. He locked lips with her, forcing oxygen into her lungs while they were still submerged. It was a cinematic rescue in the middle of the deep blue. Pearl's eyes flew open and her survival instincts kicked in, making her cling to him. Internally, she was screaming shameless, while simultaneously realizing he was just trying to keep her alive. They finally broke the surface, gasping for air. Meanwhile, Alvis was still back in the garden, unaware of the near-death experience. Shay appeared out of nowhere, looking to stir the pot as usual. He smirked, asking the scholar if he also had his eyes set on the Empress. Alvis didn't even give him the time of day and just flicked him off like an annoying bug. He walked away with his usual stoic grace, leaving Shay fuming. Shay glared at his back, calling him a damn arrogant bastard. He vowed that he wouldn't lose the Empress to a guy like Alvis. But then Alvis suddenly stopped in his tracks, sensing something was wrong. Both men rushed toward the sound of the commotion at the lake. They arrived just in time to see the aftermath of the rescue. Eric was on the shore, pressing on Pearl's chest to get the water out. Shay lost his cool immediately, demanding to know what Eric was doing to her. Pearl started coughing violently, finally getting the lake water out of her system. She slowly opened her eyes, looking completely dazed. She looked up at Eric and realized he was the one who pulled her out. Eric didn't say a word, but he reached for his thick fur cape. He told her to put it on before she caught pneumonia. Pearl sat there, looking like a drowned rat and feeling totally overwhelmed. She wrapped the fur around her shoulders and gave him a quiet thanks. She immediately let out a massive sneeze, proving she was freezing. Alvis stepped forward, looking concerned, and told her she needed to change immediately. Pearl tried to stand up and called out to him, but her body wasn't cooperating. She was trembling so hard her teeth were practically chattering. She tried to take a step, but felt like her energy was completely gone. Eric didn't wait for permission and just scooped her up again. Pearl leaned into him, admitting that her legs felt like they were made of jelly. He carried her away in a classic princess carry, ignoring everyone else. It was a total hero's exit that left the other candidates in the dust. Shay watched them go, realizing that someone had already beaten them to the punch. He complained that they were too busy fighting each other while Eric swept the prize. Despite the setback, he smirked, deciding that the game was far from over. Pearl was taken to the Peace Palace for an emergency recovery session. She soaked in a hot bath filled with flower petals to get her body temperature back up. Internally, she was still reeling, unable to believe that the evil man was the one who saved her. She eventually stepped out of the water, feeling a bit more like herself. She dried off and got dressed, her mind still racing. Later, she met with the guys who were waiting for an explanation. Alv asked her exactly what happened by the water. Pearl told them straight up that someone had pushed her from behind. She mentioned that she didn't see the face, but the person sounded like a little kid. Alvis's expression went stone cold as he noted that every servant in the palace was at least 12 years old. He realized there was only one person fitting that description, and the suspicion immediately fell on the one child with enough power to get away with it. Night falls over the tranquil palace, but things are anything but peaceful. Eric is on a mission, demanding to know where the brat is hiding. His sister, the concubine dowager, plays coy and offers to send for him, acting like she isn't hiding a whole assassin. Little Joe Chen walks in, calling for his mother and completely oblivious to the fact that he's about to be caught in 4K. The moment he sees Eric's death stare, he knows he's absolutely cooked. He tries to bolt, but Eric isn't letting this pinced menace escape that easily. Eric grills him immediately, asking what exactly he was doing in the Imperial Garden this afternoon. The kid tries to lie, claiming it was someone else, but his acting is mid at best. Eric is way ahead of him. He knows Joe is the one who pushed Pearl into the lake. The mother acts shocked, but her surprise is probably total cap. Eric reminds her that if he hadn't been nearby, the Empress would be history right now. He looks Joe in the eye and demands to know why he did it. The kid finally snaps, screaming that Pearl stole from him first. Eric is confused, asking what she could possibly steal from a child. Joe goes full villain mode, yelling that the throne belongs to him and him alone. Eric looks at his sister, wondering if this trash is what she's been teaching the boy. He tells them straight up, "That's treason, buddy." Instead of apologizing, the sister doubles down, wishing the bitch had actually drowned. Eric is disgusted by how low his own blood has sunk. He asks when she became so wicked, but she just laughs it off, asking if he's scared. She tells him he'll be staying in this wicked place for a long, long time. Eric grabs the kid's arm to haul him away to justice. Joe is terrified, realizing his prince status won't save him now. The mother grabs the other arm, starting a pathetic tug-of-war with her own son. She tells Eric he can take the boy only if he's ready to lose his sister forever. Eric hesitates, caught between his duty and his family. Suddenly, an announcement ruins the mood. The Prince Regent has officially entered the chat. Eric lets go, and the kid falls over with a pathetic ow, his protection finally running out. The sound of guards' armor clangs through the hallway, signaling that playtime is over. The Prince Regent steps out of the shadows, announcing that Joe Chen is under arrest for the attempt on the Empress's life. He gives the cold order, arrest him. The mother tries to play the where's your proof card, calling the whole thing absurd. The Regent isn't a rookie. He didn't come empty-handed and even offers her a cell next to her son if she wants to keep complaining. She shuts up real quick. She shifts away from her son, choosing her own neck over the kid's. Joe is dragged away, screaming for his mama to help him, but she's already checked out. Fast forward to the prison, and Joe is still throwing a tantrum behind bars. A guard mocks him, telling him he's been abandoned because his mom is too busy saving herself. Back at the Imperial study, Pearl is busy with her lessons, trying to act like she didn't almost die. The Prince Regent drops by and Pearl is clearly feeling the awkward vibes. He looks a bit embarrassed to interrupt her grind mindset. Pearl tries to act natural, laughing off the tension. He breaks the news. The culprit who pushed her has been caught and imprisoned. Pearl asks who it was. He confirms it was Joe Chen, the concubine dowager's son. Pearl calls him out as a fake prince and asks how he'll be punished. The Regent doesn't stutter. It's the death penalty for attempted murder. The next day, the weather is perfect, but Pearl's head is in the clouds. She's totally daydreaming instead of focusing on her work. Her tutor, Alvis Su, notices she's not really there. He decides to call it a day since she's clearly preoccupied. Pearl jolts awake and tries to apologize for being a space cadet. He tells her not to worry, blaming himself for failing to capture her attention. He walks away, leaving Pearl feeling like a total failure. Internally, she groaned, "Oh no, I've disappointed him." She stares blankly into space, wondering why her life is such a mess. Suddenly, a wild silver-haired man appears at the window, asking what's on her mind. He offers to share her burden while looking like he stepped straight out of a shampoo commercial. Pearl is blindsided, realizing this guy actually followed her to the palace. He hands her a bird, telling her to cheer up. He hits her with the cringe line, "Such beautiful brows should not be frowning." He thinks he's smooth, believing a gift is the first step to a girl's heart. Internally, Pearl scoffed. What a loser. Looks like he didn't recognize me, though. She takes the bird in her hands and immediately lets it fly away. The guy is short-circuiting, asking if she didn't like it. Pearl smiles, saying she prefers when birds fly free. He tries to recover, calling her no ordinary lady and introducing himself. His name is Lawson Shay, and he's officially a candidate for a royal consort. Back in the study, Shay is still hovering like a persistent fly. Pearl is stressed, wondering why another candidate popped up so soon. Internally, she sighed. Why did it have to be this pain in the ass? Shay tells her to feel free to stare openly at him. He gets uncomfortably close, telling her his body is all hers anytime. He even lifts her chin, acting like he's the lead in a cheesy drama. Pearl is literally barfing at the gross pickup lines. He laughs, noting she looks less glum now. Pearl wonders if he was just teasing her on purpose to lighten the mood. He keeps up the act, saying his heart frowns when she does. Pearl decides the best move is to just ignore this asshole. Shay realizes his charms aren't working and drops the act. He switches gears, mentioning she's likely thinking about the day she was pushed into the lake. Pearl is surprised he knew about that. He claims he was passing by and regrets not being the one to save her. Pearl shuts him down, saying she didn't see him at all. She brings up the fact that Joe is facing execution. Shay guesses she doesn't actually want the kid to die. He suggests she share her thoughts with the Regent. Pearl refuses, thinking the Regent is too ruthless and she'd only make matters worse. Shay knows she's dead wrong about the Regent. He stays quiet. Internally, he smirked. Why help the enemy? It's not like I'm going to clear the fog for him. Pearl is convinced the mother will save Joe. Shay disagrees, but Pearl insists no mother could be so heartless. Shay tells her that in this palace, personal interest comes before blood. Pearl bets her pride on it, betting the concubine dowager will save him. Shay accepts the challenge. If she loses, she has to grant him a request. He gives her a sly look. Pearl agrees, but if she wins, he has to stop following her and quit the gross lines. Deal. Later at the Peace Palace, Pearl is trying to read. Shay sneaks in, acting jealous that she's studying to impress Alvis Sue. Pearl gives him the ultimate ignore. He asks if she's curious about what happened to Prince Joe. Pearl asks if his mother saved him yet. Shay tells her the opposite. She's acting like he never existed and the kid is in very bad shape. Pearl doesn't believe him, so he tells her to come see for herself. He grabs her and they start roof hopping through the night. They soar through the air, Pearl clinging to him. She wonders why they're sneaking around instead of just visiting directly. Shay is secretly enjoying the scenic route, just to stay in this position longer. He warns her to hold tight before they jump down. They land silently near the prison. Shay holds her close as they approach the bars. Inside, Joe is huddled in a corner, looking miserable. A guard notes the food is untouched. Joe screams that the food is stale and he won't eat it. The guard snaps back, asking about all the people Joe had bullied and driven out of the palace. He points out that many of them didn't even have the luxury of stale food. Joe just cries for his mama to let him out. The guard picks up a piece of food, saying he can't have the kid dying just yet. Joe is terrified. The guard starts force-feeding him, mockingly saying bon appetit. Pearl and Shay watch from the shadows, the reality of palace life hitting harder than a truck. Things are getting wild in the palace, as we kick off in the prison, where a guard is caught in 4K throwing rocks at the captive Prince Joe. Empress Pearl isn't about to let this slide, demanding to know how he dares to abuse a royal. The guard immediately hits the deck, begging for forgiveness while Pearl demands to know who gave the order. Internally, she sighed. There's always someone trying to settle a score in the dark. The guard confesses it was a personal vendetta, because his younger brother used to serve Joe. Apparently, the bratty prince had the brother's arm beaten until it snapped just because a butterfly flew away. The guard is ready to pay with his life, standing by his actions. Pearl keeps it real, asking if taking revenge this way just makes him a carbon copy of the villain. The guard is absolutely shook by the logic. Even Lawson Shay, watching from the sidelines, seems intrigued by her approach. Pearl asks where the brother is now, and when the guard begs for his sibling to be spared, she drops a bombshell of kindness. She promises to send a royal doctor the very next day to see if the brother's hand can still be saved. With a gentle smile, she completely blindsides the guard with her mercy. He cries out in gratitude as Pearl orders him to rise, announcing she's taking Joe with her. She leaves the guards with a final warning. If the Prince Regent has questions, tell him to come find her personally. The exit is anything but graceful as Lawson finds himself appointed as the world's most overqualified babysitter for the biting brat. Joe is straight up feral, chomping down on Lawson's arm while the consort candidate yells in pain. Internally, Lawson screamed, "I didn't sign up for the daycare DLC." Pearl starts second-guessing her life choices, wondering if bringing Joe was a total lapse in judgment. Lawson asks why she's even bothering to save the kid if she's so afraid of the regent. Pearl explains that the concubine dowager clearly isn't coming to the rescue, and she couldn't just leave a child to rot in a cell alone. Suddenly, the sky turns pitch black as thunder begins to rumble. The storm triggers a deep-seated memory of a child being screamed at and called a brat. A mysterious master looms over a younger Pearl, asking why she isn't dead yet and blaming her for being stuck in a miserable place. The master stumbles away, leaving the child stranded in the pouring rain. The young girl collapses, sobbing in the mud as she's abandoned. Pearl stares into the distance, remembering how it felt to be unloved and unwanted. Back in the present, Joe is still trying to eat Lawson's hand. Pearl snaps out of it and points a finger, threatening to throw Joe back into the dungeon if he says one more word. Lawson asks what her actual plan is for the mini-menace. Pearl smirks, declaring that since his mother couldn't keep him in line, she'll do it herself. Night falls over the palace as her training regime begins. First step: feeding the beast, as Joe gobbles down a chicken leg like he's never seen food. He finishes the meal with a massive burp, looking satisfied for once. Pearl leans in with a devious grin, announcing it's time to get down to business. The business turns out to be a terrifying lesson as guards carry a confused Joe toward the water. He screams for them to let go as they reach the edge of a lake. Pearl blindfolds him and has him placed in the shallow water, leaving him disoriented. He reaches out, panicking as he realizes he's surrounded by water. He screams for help, completely terrified. Suddenly, his foot slips on the bottom. He goes under, gurgling and flailing as he struggles to breathe. Just as he thinks it's over, he begs for help one last time. A hand reaches down and grabs his collar. Pearl hauls him up as he coughs and sputters, gasping for air. She pulls off his blindfold and tells him coldly that this is exactly what drowning feels like. Internally, she scoffed. "Consider this a free trial of your own medicine." She reminds him that the lake he pushed her into was way deeper, and she almost died. She leans in close, whispering that if she had died, she would have come back as a ghost to haunt him forever. She describes the horror of being held underwater until he's shaking with fear. The lesson is simple: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. A humbled Joe nods repeatedly, finally understanding the weight of his actions. Pearl smiles, knowing the only way to handle a spoiled kid is to give them a reality check. She sets the new rules: hurt someone, get double the punishment; break a hand, she'll break both of his. She asks if she's made herself clear. Joe gives a submissive nod, nod. Pearl pats his head, satisfied with the progress. Lawson stands back, absolutely stunned by the transformation. He asks how on earth she managed to tame the beast. Pearl just laughs it off, claiming she's a professional when it comes to dealing with brats. Later at the Peace Palace, the moon is high and the drama has cooled down. Joe is tucked into bed, sleeping peacefully for the first time. Pearl watches him, thinking he looks like an angel when he isn't trying to murder people. Suddenly, Joe cries out for his mama in his sleep and grabs Pearl's hand with a tight grip. Pearl is caught off guard as he pulls her closer. He whimpers, asking if she's leaving him too. Pearl realizes he's holding on for dear life. Internally, she wondered, is this kid actually making me feel things? She ends up staying by his side, eventually getting sleepy herself. Joe keeps a firm grip on her finger all night. The room falls into a heavy silence as the Empress and the Prince sleep. When morning comes, Joe is the first to wake up. He sees Pearl sleeping right there and is visibly confused. He slowly releases her hand. He realizes he dreamt his mother was holding him, but it was actually Pearl the whole time. He remembers bitterly that his real mother never actually tucked him in. Pearl blinks awake. She tells him it's time to get washed up and go back to his palace. Joe just stares at her silently. Pearl asks if something is wrong and if he's missing his mom. She jokingly asks if he wants to stay with her instead. Joe goes full sunder, screaming no way, and calling her a monster before bolting out the door. Pearl watches him run, completely speechless. She wonders if she's just getting too old to understand kids these days. The scene shifts to the Imperial study. Mr. Su, her tutor, enters with a smirk, having heard about the lesson she gave Joe. Apparently, the bratty prince actually bowed to him earlier, which is a literal miracle. Su praises Pearl, saying she's the only one who could make him behave. Pearl's ego inflates instantly, and she starts acting all proud. But the vibe check comes fast when Su pulls out a book. He shows her a test paper covered in red circles. Turns out she failed every single question. Pearl's proud face crumbles instantly. The ugly truth is that she's a disaster at her studies. Su tries to be encouraging, saying she's intelligent but just needs more focus. Pearl complains that she didn't understand the questions at all. She dramatically leans over the desk, claiming she's been studying super hard already. She gets right in Su's personal space, demanding he look at the dark circles under her eyes. She blames the dark circles entirely on Jantix. Mr. starts short-circuiting at the proximity, telling her to refrain from such inappropriate behavior. Pearl sees a different side of him and realizes she's got him flustered. Su turns away, his face flushing red. He tells her to read the Book of Rights and promises to test her later before making a quick escape. Pearl lets out a frustrated scream as she's left with the books. As the sun sets, Pearl is still at the desk. She eventually passes out on top of her open books. Mr. Su watches her from the shadows, wondering if he's pushing her too hard. He reminds himself she's only 16. He has a flashback to his grandfather telling him that the Su family has served the empire for generations. The instructions were clear. Teach her with patience, keep her safe, and protect her with his life. His grandfather emphasized that the Empress is like the sky above, she is everything. But Su remembers thinking that no one ever asked him if he actually wanted to be a royal consort. Back in reality, he tells the servants not to disturb her rest. He takes one last look at her through the blinds. Pearl is still fast asleep. A bit later, she wakes up and stretches her arms. She realizes Mr. Su is gone and wonders if she scared him off. She hides her face in her hands, feeling a bit embarrassed. But then she smiles, thinking about how cute he looked when he was blushing. She picks up a brush. She starts drawing something with a mischievous look on her face. It's a perfect, sparkling portrait of Mr. Su himself. Suddenly, Lawson Shay walks in, greeting her. Pearl panics, shouting ah, and scrambling to hide the drawing. She tosses the scrolls onto the table, insisting it's nothing. Lawson looks suspicious, his eyes narrowing. Pearl tries to block his view, shifting her weight around. Lawson steps in close, towering over her. The tension is through the roof as they lock eyes. Lawson reaches out toward her. He suddenly pushes her back, pinning her down onto the table. Pearl is flustered, ordering him to move and get off her right now. Lawson leans in, telling her she must never show her shy face to anyone but him. He demands a promise before he'll let her go. Pearl eventually kicks him out, slamming the door as Lawson makes his exit. Her heart is absolutely pounding, ba-dump, against her chest. She wonders how she let herself fall for his tricks yet again. She remembers that he almost found the portrait of Mr. Su. She looks down at the table. Her eyes go wide as she realizes the portrait is completely gone. Lawson Shay is out here acting like a jealous boyfriend who just found his girl's secret stash. He unrolls the portrait Pearl drew of Mr. Su and immediately starts fuming. He calls Su an arrogant bastard who's only acting cool to get in her good graces. Lawson starts spiraling, wondering if something spicy actually happened between them to inspire such a drawing. He grabs the paper, ready to shred it to keep Pearl's heart all to himself. But at the last second, he realizes he can't even commit to the destruction of her work. He just lets it go, looking completely defeated by a piece of paper. Back at the Shay mansion, he gets the typical royal welcome from his staff. He's still in his feelings, looking like he's about to start a villain arc over a simple sketch. Internally, he scoffed. Why is that dry tutor living rent-free in her head? He tosses the portrait onto a chest like it's yesterday's trash. He tries to sleep it off, but the obsession keeps him wide awake. A breeze blows the paper down and Lawson finally snaps. He shouts in frustration, realizing he's acting like a total clown. He sits there pouting, looking absolutely disgusted with his own life choices. Finally, he decides to bury the evidence, rummaging through a chest to find a hiding spot. He shoves the portrait under a heavy pile of books, hoping it stays buried forever. Unfortunately for him, the maids decide today is the perfect day for some spring cleaning. They carry the chest out to air the books in the sun. One maid pulls out a volume only to find Lawson's secret stash. She immediately jumps to the wrong conclusion, thinking Lawson is secretly in love with Mr. Su. Within minutes, the tea is served hot in the courtyard. The maids are whispering like they just found out the king is a lizard person. When Lawson walks by, he senses the weird vibes. The servants start cheering him on, telling him they support his forbidden love for the tutor. Lawson is left standing there with a million question marks over his head. He decides to ignore the weirdos and head to the palace to see Pearl. It's late at night at Peace Palace. Pearl is trying to study, but she's clearly bored out of her mind and daydreaming. She hears a cough and nearly jumps out of her skin. Lawson is back, and Pearl is not amused that he's treating her palace like a late-night convenience store. He flexes that the regent gave him a VIP pass to come and go as he pleases. Apparently, he paid for that privilege with a year's worth of his family's massive income. Pearl's first instinct is to ask him to just give that spare change to her instead. Lawson leans in, promising that if she makes him her consort, she'll be the richest woman in the world. Internally, she was drooling. This man is literally a human ATM with a face. She tries to push him away, reminding herself that her heart can't be bought. Lawson then mentions she still owes him a favor. He wants her to draw a portrait of him, just like the one she did for Sue. Pearl freezes, realizing she's been caught in 4K. She screams that he's the one who stole her drawing. She demands it back, but Lawson lies through his teeth, saying he accidentally tore it. Internally, he smirked. No way am I letting her stare at that guy's face all day. Pearl gives in, figuring a quick sketch will get him to leave her alone. Lawson gets into a paint me like one of your French girls pose on the bed. Pearl admits he's good looking, but he's way too flirty for his own good. She finishes the drawing, but she accidentally adds a little something extra. She gave him full-on fox ears to match his sly personality. She tries to roll the paper up before he sees the roast, but Lawson is too fast, sneaking up behind her to get a peek. He calls her a liar as he grabs the paper. He pulls her into a back hug, looking way too pleased with himself. Pearl is blushing hard, realizing she messed up the vibes. Lawson realizes she thinks he's a cunning fox. Pearl tries to stutter an excuse, but she's short-circuiting. Lawson just gives her that "I know you want me" look. He leans in close, asking if she's finally been seduced by his charms. Pearl's heart is doing gymnastics at this point. Suddenly, the mood is absolutely nuked. A guard announces that Mr. Su is here to report some official business. Lawson's eyes light up, seeing a perfect chance to mark his territory. He pulls Pearl even closer, making sure they look as suspicious as possible. Su walks in and sees the two of them practically glued together. Pearl is internally screaming. This looks so bad right now, I'm caught in 4K. Su keeps his poker face, telling her that if she's picked a consort, she needs to make it official and start wedding planning. Pearl panics, shoving Lawson away and swearing it's not what it looks like. Lawson just makes it worse, telling her not to be shy about their pleasant night together. Pearl shuts him up by literally muzzling him with her hand. She tries to explain herself to Su, who looks completely unbothered. Su just ignores the drama, reporting that he's taking a day off for family matters. He tells her she'll be doing writing and archery lessons tomorrow instead. As soon as Su leaves, Pearl kicks Lawson into the next century. Lawson catches up to Su outside the palace, clearly wanting to gloat. He pulls out the fox-ear portrait to brag. He asks Su if he's jealous that the Empress drew this special portrait just for him. Su just looks at it and calls her drawing style imaginative, which is basically a polite way of saying it's trash. Lawson is convinced Su is just coping and seething internally. He laughs like a maniac, convinced he's won this round. He goes on a rant about how obsessed Pearl is with his handsomeness. But when he looks up, Su has already dipped. Lawson assumes Su couldn't handle the sight of his victory. He smirks, thinking he'll never tell Su that his portrait was actually drawn first. The next day at the training ground, Pearl is ready for some action. She wonders who's going to be her sensei for the day. Suddenly, a horse comes charging in like a bat out of hell. Pearl is stunned as a man with black hair and red highlights pulls off a perfect stop. She asks what he's doing there, blindsided by his presence. He tells her he's her new instructor for riding and shooting. Internally, she groaned. Literally anyone else would have been better than this guy. He decides to show off, riding his horse across the field with ease. He grabs a bow and aims with deadly precision. He nails the bullseye like it's nothing. He grabs more arrows to double down. He fires two at once. Both hit the center perfectly, showing he's not a fraud. Pearl is actually shook by his skills. He asks if she's got it, and she tries to act like she's not impressed. She scoffs that true marksmen can hit an apple from 100 yards. The trainer's eyes go cold as he draws his bow again. Pearl panics, thinking he's actually aiming for her. She curls into a ball, begging for her life. She hears a thud and sees a caterpillar falling in front of her face. He literally shot a tiny bug hanging right above her head. Pearl is officially petrified, vowing never to cross this man. He asks what she wants to try first. She chooses shooting, thinking she might be a secret prodigy. She reaches for his bow, but he stops her. He points to a tiny, pathetic-looking bow instead. Pearl is offended, thinking he's treating her like a toddler. She demands to use his big boy bow. He warns her, but she doesn't listen to reason. As soon as he lets go, she realizes she's made a huge mistake. The bow is heavy as a pile of bricks. She drops it right on her foot with a loud thud. She's left sitting on the ground, holding her foot in agony. Defeated, she picks up the baby bow. She takes a serious stance, aiming for some kind of glory. She lets the arrow fly, and it travels about 2 feet before hitting the dirt. Her ego is officially in pieces. The trainer adds salt to the wound, telling her he used that bow when he was 6. Back at the training ground, the vibe is as intense as a final exam you didn't study for. The palace architecture is looking pretty, but the mood inside is anything but peaceful. Pearl's tiny hands are gripping the bow like her life depends on it. Which, honestly, in this palace it might. The martial instructor is hovering over her, telling her to relax and keep those arms level. Internally, Pearl's screaming because relaxing while a human killing machine breathes down your neck is a total meth. She takes the shot, focused and ready to prove she's more than just a royal decoration. Plunk, an arrow hits something. Pearl is absolutely stoked, wearing a grin that says she just won the lottery. But the instructor is the ultimate buzzkill, pointing out the arrow didn't even sniff the target. Pearl pivots to the classic, "It's not me, it's the gear" excuse, complaining that the bow is just too small for her talent. Surprisingly, the instructor actually bites, promising to make her a proper bow once she can actually aim. Challenge accepted. Pearl is hyped and ready to grind. She's firing off arrows like a machine gun, grabbing more from the quiver without a second thought. She's determined to get that upgrade and prove her worth. Arrow after arrow, she's putting in the work. Swoosh, another one flies, and another plunk into the dirt. She's so close she can almost taste the victory, loading up for yet another shot. The instructor watches her, actually looking a bit blindsided by her tenacity, but he notices her hands are starting to look like a horror movie set with all the scrapes and cuts. Pearl doesn't even care, she's in the zone. Finally, he calls it a day, telling her they'll continue tomorrow. Pearl is confused because she was just getting warmed up. He grabs the bow from her and walks away without another word. Internally, she's pouting, thinking he's just dodging the promise of that new bow. She keeps practicing her form even after he's gone, but the pain finally catches up to her. She stares at her battered hands, realizing training to be an elite marksman isn't all glitz and glam. Back at the Peace Palace, the night is quiet until the resident drama king arrives. Lawson Shay shows up with a smug look and a cup of tea, offering a jade ring made of warm jade to protect her skin. It's a literal piece of high-end jewelry designed for archery safety. He grabs her hand, acting like her tiny scratches are life-threatening injuries. He starts trash-talking the instructor, calling him a careless brute for letting her get hurt. He's seizing every opportunity for a smear campaign to boost his own ranking. Pearl isn't having it and pulls her hand away. She tells him she's not as delicate as he thinks, and she's going to force the instructor to keep his promise tomorrow. Lawson asks what promise she's talking about, but she shuts him down, telling him it's none of his business. Poor Lawson is left feeling completely wounded. Meanwhile, at the Great General's mansion, the martial instructor is looking suspiciously productive. He's actually at a workbench, adjusting and polishing a high-end bow. He's tweaking the string, making sure it's perfect. Suddenly, one of his subordinates bursts in, shocked that the general has stepped down from his post. He slams his hands on the table, demanding to know if the rumors about him being a consort candidate are true. The general admits it's true, leaving the soldier absolutely floored. The guy assumes the Empress is forcing him into this role, but the general sets him straight, saying it has nothing to do with her. It was his own decision, he says as he clenches the bow frame. The soldier reminds him of his promise to lead them to victory against the Afron Empire. The general's hand starts to tremble with frustration. Snap! He actually breaks a piece of the equipment in his grip. He insists he hasn't forgotten his duties, but the soldier isn't convinced, accusing him of just being the Empress' pet for political gain. The general coldly replies that he's no longer their general. He loosens his grip on the broken tool, looking at his own scared palm. He starts flashing back to his intimate moments with Pearl, including her training and that one accidental kiss. He tells himself it's just for 1 year to pay back a debt to his sister. He gets back to work, tugging the string tight. He wraps the handle and starts carving a custom thumb ring to match. He inspects the finished product, a beautifully engraved metal ring. The next day at the training ground, Pearl is practically vibrating with excitement. She sees the instructor waiting for her. She runs up, demanding the new bow he promised. He glances at her and notices she's already wearing Lawson's jade ring. He goes silent and tells her to just practice on her own today, tossing the old bow at her. Pearl is totally confused by the sudden cold shoulder. The general clenches his fist in annoyance. He looks at the ring he spent all night making and just drops it into the grass as he walks away. Pearl keeps practicing and actually hits the target. She turns to show off, but the spot where the instructor was standing is totally empty. She wonders where he went when she spots something shiny in the grass. It's a thumb ring. She slides it onto her finger and realizes it fits perfectly. She wonders who could have left it there. When the wind picks up, she spots something else, a brand new bow leaning against a rack. She picks it up, realizing it's exactly what she wanted. She pauses, noticing the bow and ring are made of the exact same material. Internally, she's shook, thinking, did that evil general actually make these for me? She doesn't get why he wouldn't just say something before leaving. With the new gear, Pearl finally hits a bullseye. She looks around for the instructor and finds him watching from a distance. She runs over to thank him for the gifts, chirping away like a happy bird. He plays it cool, saying he was just keeping his promise. He looks at her holding the bow and can't help but let out a tiny rare smile. Pearl is blindsided, shouting that he actually smiled. She begs him to do it again, but he goes back to his stoic self, asking what she takes him for. Internally, Pearl is reeling from how handsome he looked. He tells her to keep her mind on her studies and stop flirting with him. I wasn't flirting, she protests. He changes the subject, announcing her learning to ride horses today. Pearl is all for it, claiming she's an expert because she once rode a pig. The general is 100% done with her nonsense. He tells her horses are partners in battle and she needs to bond with hers. He introduces a foal born to his own horse, Snow, warning her she's got a proud nature. He says it won't be easy to tame her. Pearl approaches the horse, and the animal immediately licks her hand. Pearl laughs, saying it tickles. The general is stunned, asking how she did it. Internally, Pearl smirks because animals have always loved her, but she's not giving up that secret. Since they've bonded, the lesson begins. He tells her to start by walking slowly. Pearl gets overconfident, telling him she'll be fine on her own. She thinks this is no different from riding a pig, just taller. The horse starts to trot along happily. The general tells her to be careful, but Pearl just brushes him off. She's having the time of her life, until the horse gets irritated and whinnies. Suddenly, the horse rears up, and Pearl lets out a scream as it dashes off. She's completely lost control. The general doesn't miss a beat. He hops onto his own horse and charges after her with blue flames practically trailing behind him. He yells for her to hold on, gaining ground on the runaway horse. He reaches out and grabs Pearl, pulling her off the wild horse and onto his own. Pearl is shaken, clinging to to him and crying that she almost fell off. In her panic, she nuzzles into his neck. The general is caught in 4K, looking completely dazed by the closeness. Pearl notices he's spacing out and asks what's wrong. She tries to push herself away to get some space, but the movement throws off their balance. They both tumble off the horse. Pearl grips his clothes as they fall, and they land in a heap on the grass. They stare at each other in shock. Pearl realizes the gravity of the situation. Internally, she's short-circuiting, thinking, "It's my fault we fell. He's gonna kill me!" Pearl realizes she's in deep trouble after the riding accident and waits for the general to lose it. Internally, she thinks a quick apology might save her skin. She hits him with the classic "I'm sorry" pose, looking as pathetic as possible. She even tells him to punish her however he wants, trying to look totally innocent. The general is so blindsided by her sudden submission that he actually takes a step back. Seeing the big, bad general actually getting shy makes Pearl realize she's found his literal off switch. Internally, she's cackling. "Looks like I found a way to deal with him." Suddenly, a whinny breaks the tension as the horse from earlier approaches. The poor animal looks totally defeated and apologetic. Pearl immediately goes soft, telling the horse it wasn't its fault. The general watches in disbelief, wondering if she's actually some kind of beastmaster since he could never tame this foal. Pearl waves him over to check out a discovery she made while mounting. There's a nasty purple bruised spot on the horse's hindquarters. Pearl reaches out to inspect the cause, noticing a tiny thorn embedded in the skin. Before she can touch it, the general grabs her hand midair. He warns her that the stinger is actually poisonous. Without a second thought, he plucks the stinger out with his bare hands. Pearl freaks out, asking why he'd use his bare hands if he knew it was toxic. He casually flexes, saying her skin is too delicate while his is rough and battle-hardened. Despite his tough guy act, his hand starts swelling up immediately. Pearl looks at him with genuine concern, telling him she doesn't want to see him hurt. The general feels a sudden jolt to his heart, completely caught off guard by her kindness. He quickly shifts back to professional mode, explaining that this stinger belongs to a deadly wasp that shouldn't even be in the palace. Pearl realizes someone is actively trying to send her to the afterlife. Internally, she's sobbing, as if being Empress wasn't tiring enough. Now I have to dodge assassins? After a moment of silence, Pearl's brain starts working overtime. The general vows to hunt down the culprit, but Pearl has a much more pro-gamer move in mind. She suggests they play along with the assassin's plan. If she pretends to be gravely injured and bedridden, the killer will definitely come back to finish the job. The general is impressed by her tactical mind. She looks him in the eye and tells him she'll need his protection for this to work. The general drops to one knee, looking like a total main character. He swears on his life to protect her until his last breath. Soon, the palace gossip mill is running at 100% capacity. Maids whisper about how the Empress fell off a mad horse and is currently unconscious. They even mention that the regent is so mad he sent the general to death row. One specific maid smirks in the shadows, clearly thinking she's won. That night at the Peace Palace, everything is eerily quiet. Pearl lies in bed, looking like she's in a deep coma, but underneath the covers, she's wide awake and annoyed. She knows that since the strategic advisor returns tomorrow, tonight is the murderer's only window. A sudden breeze blows through the courtyard. The suspicious maid from earlier creeps toward the chambers. She looks totally unhinged, commanding her pets to go kill the Empress. Suddenly, she's interrupted by a shadow. She's caught in 4K by the general's men before she can even blink. The general himself steps out of the darkness with a terrifying glare. The maid is shook, wondering why he isn't in a dungeon cell. He offers her a deal. Tell him who she's working for, and he'll make her death quick. The maid just laughs, taunting him that her pets have already swarmed the Empress' bed. The general's face turns to pure ice as he orders his men to take her away. He sprints toward Pearl's room at Olympic speeds. Inside, the floor is literally crawling with scorpions and poisonous pests. The general bursts in, screaming for her majesty. He freezes when he sees the sheer number of bugs. Pearl tells him to stay back and not come any closer. She reveals that she actually came prepared for a bug invasion. She's sitting safely in a circle of insect repellent she sprinkled around her bed. The general is relieved but insists her life is too precious to gamble with. Pearl just gives him a cheeky tongue out, saying she knows what she's doing. She holds up a bottle, ready to finish the job and drive the rest of the pests away. Suddenly, the general takes a step forward and the scorpions start panicking. He emits such a terrifying aura that the bugs literally disperse just to get away from him. He walks through the sea of insects like a god of war. Pearl can only stare in awe as he approaches her bed. He looks down at her with a soft but firm expression. He leans in close, making Pearl's heart do backflips. He reaches out and gently grabs her waist. He sweeps her into a bridal carry, telling her to stop making him worry. He stands in the middle of the room, looking absolutely majestic while holding her. Pearl realizes that even the scorpions are more afraid of him than he is of them. She leans her head against his chest, feeling surprisingly safe. She looks up at him, calling him general. He interrupts her and says his name is actually Eric. He gently sets her down and asks her to call him by his name from now on. Pearl is hyped, asking if she can really be that casual with him. They share a sweet, lingering look that definitely has some death flags for any other love interests. The moment is ruined when a soldier rushes in to report that the assassin committed suicide. She bit a poison pill hidden in her mouth before they could interrogate her. The general looks frustrated, while Pearl tries to process the news. They go to inspect the body in the courtyard. The maid is definitely gone, leaving behind more questions than answers. Pearl thinks it's a major inconvenience since they can't find the mastermind now. Eric tells her not to worry, because he already has a hunch about who's behind this. Pearl follows him, wondering what's next. They head to the maid's quarters to look for evidence. Suddenly, other maids come running out, screaming for help. Pearl stops stops one of them to ask what's wrong. The girl collapses in terror, calling out to Her Majesty. Pearl demands an answer with her full Empress authority. The maid cries that the room is crawling with centipedes, snakes, and scorpions. Pearl looks at Eric, and they realize the assassin left behind a literal biological weapon. They open the doors to find the room is a nightmare fuel factory. It's infested with every creepy crawly imaginable. Eric tells Pearl to stay put while he goes in to clear the room, but Pearl isn't about to be a damsel in distress and insists on coming along. She pulls out her secret weapon, a bottle of repellent powder. She starts scattering it everywhere like she's seasoning a stick. The bugs absolutely hate it and start running for their lives. Eric watches her, probably wondering if he's even needed here. They find a massive jar used for breeding these poisonous pests. Eric realizes the assassin was a professional beast handler. Since the handler is dead, the creatures have gone completely feral. Eric warns that she might have been raising something even bigger. He starts searching the room, leaving Pearl alone for a second. Suddenly, a loud croak echoes through the room. A giant mutated purple toad leaps out of the shadows. Eric screams for her to watch out, but Pearl is already moving. She grabs a heavy ceramic jar with both hands. She goes full barbarian mode, screaming, "Die, you little shit," while smashing the jar onto the toad. After a few satisfying squelching sounds, the toad is flattened into a pancake. Eric is visibly sweating, realizing that the bigger thing he was worried about just got obliterated by a jar. Pearl just gives him a what look. He asks if she's not afraid of bugs, and she laughs it off. She reveals that during her wandering days, she used to wake up with snakes and rats in her bed every morning. A flashback shows a tiny Pearl greeting a snake with a morning like it's a normal Tuesday. Eric looks genuinely sorry she had to live like that. He explains that there's a tribe in the south of the Quivel Empire that specializes in this kind of insect witchcraft. Based on the jar's design, it's 100% confirmed the assassin was from Quivel. He warns that if they're sending assassins into the palace, they must be planning an all-out invasion. Pearl gets fired up, declaring that Quivel needs to learn the price of threatening her empire. Eric asks what she suggests they do. She points a finger and tells him to storm their city walls and force a confession out of them. Eric bows, telling her it's a fantastic suggestion. Pearl freezes, wondering if he's being sarcastic because she just suggested starting a war. She asks if she's being too rash, especially since she just took the throne. Eric looks her dead in the eye and says Quivel is nothing to him. He recounts how he crushed them 10 years ago, taking 12 of their cities in his first expedition. Pearl is internally swooning, thinking, wow, he's actually a beast. He explains that making an example of them now will prevent future chaos. Pearl realizes her attempt to be a merciful empress has failed, but she's okay with it. She then asks a question that's been bugging her. Why did a legendary general resign just to join her harem? Eric's expression changes instantly. Without saying a word, he turns around and walks away. Pearl is left standing there, wondering if she accidentally stepped on a landmine. The next day, Pearl is back to her studies, sipping tea and reading. She hears the door creak and glances up. It's Lawson Shea, the strategic advisor, returning with a smug grin. Internally, Pearl groans, "Ah, him again." Lawson congratulates her, mentioning that the most beautiful man in the world will soon be hers. Pearl spits out her tea in shock, asking what on earth he's talking about. Lawson leans in and explains that Quivel caved under pressure from their troops. The sixth prince of Quivel, Mo Li, is rumored to have otherworldly beauty. To avoid being wiped off the map, Quivel surrendered. And as a tribute, they've offered their sixth prince to join her harem. Pearl is left completely speechless, realizing her palace is about to get a lot more crowded. Harmony Palace is looking extra fancy today as the court gears for the arrival of a very special guest. Empress Pearl is decked out in her most regal fit, looking every bit the powerful ruler she's become. The doors swing open to reveal the sixth prince of Quivel, Mo Li, standing in a literal halo of light. This guy has some serious main character energy, with long blue hair that's shimmering more than a new iPhone screen. From head to toe, he's pure eye candy, draped in elegant white and blue robes. He offers a graceful bow and greets her with a smooth, "Your Majesty." Pearl is absolutely blindsided, staring at him like she's just seen a ghost from her past. She blurts out his name, Mo, in total disbelief. Forgetting all her royal etiquette, she rushes down from the throne to get a closer look. She even reaches out to grab his sleeve, desperate to confirm if he's the real deal. Looking him dead in the eyes, she insists it's her, Pearl, but Mo just gives her a polite, distant look. He hits her with the ultimate rejection, claiming she must have him confused with someone else. Pearl is left standing there looking totally caught in 4K, her brain essentially short-circuiting. She tries to play it cool, but her heart clearly isn't in it. Later, she's wandering the Imperial Garden, still obsessing over the mysterious prince. Suddenly, she's nearly knocked over when Lawson pops up out of nowhere, getting way too close for comfort. He's acting incredibly salty, asking if the new guy has already ensnared her heart. He calls her out for being way too excited earlier and calling the prince by his first name. Pearl is just confused by this sudden burst of jealousy. Lawson decides he's been too gentle and starts moving in like a predator, cornering her against a tree. He gets right in her face, practically begging for her attention. Pearl is genuinely shocked by this sudden shift in his personality. Just as things are getting way too spicy, Pearl realizes this isn't the vibe. She shoves him back with a firm no and regains her personal space. Internally, she wondered, When did my harmless fox Lawson become a dangerous predator? Suddenly, the sound of beautiful music drifts through the trees. Across the pond, Mo is sitting peacefully, playing the zither like a literal god. He looks incredibly serene, even the fish are gathering in the water just to hear him play. A little bird even lands right next to him, which is a total flex. Pearl realizes this has to be the real Mo, because he always was a bird magnet back in the day. Lawson, watching from behind, is absolutely seething, calling Mo an annoying siren. Determined to outshine his rival, Lawson whips out a jade flute. He starts playing with everything he's got, looking incredibly intense. But the sound is so tuneless and high-pitched that it's basically a sonic attack. Pearl has to cover her ears, yelling at him to stop before he causes permanent hearing damage. Even the birds decide to scatter, unable to handle the noise pollution. Mo looks up, finally noticing the chaos. He approaches Pearl and offers his apologies for the disturbance. Pearl quickly tells him it's fine and tosses all the shade at Lawson, saying it was his fault. She tells Mo his playing was beautiful, and he hits her with a smile that's basically a flashbang of handsomeness. Pearl is absolutely smitten, thinking his music sounds like flowers blooming. Meanwhile, Lawson is in the background looking like he's about to start a one-man emo band. That night, Pearl is still distracted, staring out at the moon and thinking of Mo. Lawson sneaks up behind her again, touching her hair with a lingering hand. He asks if she's still thinking about that sly fox prince. Pearl smirks and retorts that Lawson is actually the sly fox. Then she realizes she let his secret nickname slip and covers her mouth in panic. She tries to shove him away, but Lawson is feeling bold. He whispers that if he really were a fox, he'd make her his right now. He leans in close, making the tension skyrocket as they stare into each other's eyes. He grabs her wrist, holding her steady. Pearl is left wondering what has gotten into him. Lawson tells her to stay quiet, but before he can make a move, a wild challenger appears. A little white ferret zooms across the floor. It leaps through the air and lands right on Lawson's face, completely ruining the romantic moment. Lawson is screaming, totally losing his cool over what he calls a rat. The ferret parkours off him and poses triumphantly on a lantern. Lawson starts chasing it around the room like a madman, looking like a total clown. It's absolute chaos as he tries to catch the fuzzy ninja. Pearl just stands there, her face a mask of pure judgment. Mo Lee suddenly appears at the door, greeting her calmly as if nothing is wrong. He explains that his little pet wandered off and hopes it didn't hurt her. The ferret looks incredibly proud of its work. It jumps right back onto Mo's shoulder, its rightful throne. Lawson is fuming, realizing he just got outplayed by a rodent. He tries to play the victim, crying to Pearl that Mo is bullying him. Pearl ignores Lawson's drama entirely and recognizes the pet as Snowball. This is the smoking gun. It's definitely the Mo from her past. They share a long, silent moment while Snowball just squeaks. Suddenly, Snowball jumps right into Pearl's arms. She laughs as the ferret tickles her, looking genuinely happy for the first time all day. Lawson is devastated, unable to believe she's hugging that rat. Pearl tells Lawson to beat it because she needs some private time with Mo. Lawson tries to resist, but Pearl pulls the Empress card, asking if he's disobeying a direct order. Lawson walks away pouting, looking like his entire world just ended. Left alone, Pearl turns to Mo. Mo says he thought she'd want to gatekeep their history and keep it a secret. Pearl is confused, asking why he'd think that. She reminds him how they met when she was penniless and fleeing creditors with her master. They used to hide in his house, squeezed into a closet together to stay safe. Back then, she thought he looked like an angel from heaven. Even now, she thinks he might be the most stunning person in the world. She asks how a poor kid like him ended up as a prince. Mo flips the script, asking how she became an empress. Pearl gets a bit emotional, her eyes tearing up. She tells him to stop with the Your Majesty stuff. She reaches for his hand, asking if he really doesn't remember his Pearl. But as she pulls up his sleeve, she sees horrific, jagged scars covering his entire arm. She's absolutely horrified by the sight. Mo pulls away, apologizing for startling her. He begs her not to cast him away, claiming the scars aren't permanent. Pearl realizes he must have been brutally mistreated back in Quivel. She tells him that would never happen and vows to protect him from now on. Mo walks off into the snowy night, leaving Pearl with her thoughts. She watches him go, her mind racing with questions. And of course, Lawson is still lurking in the shadows, absolutely salty that the Empress is so smitten with the newcomer. The moon is high, and so is Lawson's jealousy as he crashes Pearl's late-night hangout. He's acting like a total overprotective bodyguard, claiming he can't let anything untoward happen to the Empress while she's alone with another man. Pearl tries to explain that things aren't what they look like with Mo, but Lawson isn't in the mood for a civil discussion. He effectively shuts her up with a finger to the lips, before suddenly snatching her up in a bridal carry that catches her completely off guard. In one swift move, he parkours them right onto the palace roof. He looks way too smug about this mid-air kidnapping. As the two of them settle under the starlight, Pearl is blindsided when he pulls out a flute, and she immediately starts screaming for him to stop playing that cursed instrument. Internally, she groaned, "Just murder me now before my eardrums explode." But then, the vibe shifts. The music actually starts sounding like a masterpiece. Pearl finds herself vibing to the tune, watching him play like he's the lead in a historical K-drama. Lawson drops a major flirt, telling her she's the first girl he's ever actually wanted to play for. Pearl is officially caught in 4K, staring at him with stars in her eyes. He leans in close, promising to play only for her from now on. Pearl's heart starts doing gymnastics, and Lawson asks for a wish in return for his performance. He closes the distance, looking dead serious about making a move. He's ready to pick up right where they left off without any interruptions. Pearl starts panicking because the tension is getting way too real, way too fast. He closes his eyes, moving in for the kill, but Snowball the ferret has zero chill and launches a surprise attack on his face. Lawson loses his mind, vowing to catch the little little beast if it's the last thing he does. He teleports away after the ferret, leaving Pearl completely stranded on the roof. She starts screaming for help into the night sky, wondering how her life became a slapstick comedy. Luckily, General Eric is on the night shift and spots her looking like a lost kitten. He tells her to just jump and promises to catch her. Eric is looking like a total snack in his red gear, and Pearl decides to take the risk. She takes the leap of faith, and Eric catches her perfectly like a pro. Once she's safe, he asks if she's alright, but Pearl is just standing there looking dazed. Her legs are literally trembling, so she ends up clinging to him for dear life. Internally, she realized, my legs are actually numb from sitting on those tiles for so long. Eric starts blushing hard, awkwardly asking her to let go. Pearl notices his face is glowing red and checks him for a fever. Eric insists he's fine while Pearl enjoys teasing the big scary general into a state of embarrassment. Eric wants to know why she was roof camping in the middle of the night. Pearl puts Lawson on blast, blaming him for leaving her there all alone. She asks why Eric is still at the palace, and he reveals he's patrolling for any leftover assassin. Pearl is touched by his dedication. Eric coughs into his hand, trying to stay professional and keep his distance. Pearl laughs, telling him she'd like him even more if he just admitted he does these things secretly for her. He begs her to stop making fun of him, but she doubles down, saying she's actually starting to like him. Eric is absolutely short-circuiting at the sudden confession. Pearl notes that he's nothing like the evil general who whipped her when they first met. Eric gets a bit somber, asking if she's still upset about that. Pearl says she let that go ages ago, and they share a surprisingly wholesome moment under the full moon. But then Eric drops a truth bomb. His investigations reveal Mo is the son of a shaman witch from South Quevel skilled in insect witchcraft. He warns her that the apple usually doesn't fall far from the tree, implying Mo is a danger to her. Pearl immediately jumps to Mo's defense. Eric gets suspicious, asking how well she actually knows the guy. Pearl shuts her mouth, knowing Mo wouldn't want his horrific past aired out to everyone. She tells Eric it's a private matter, which clearly hits a nerve with the general. Eric walks away, warning her that if Mo endangers the Empire, he'll have to answer to him personally. Pearl tries to call him back, but she's left feeling like she just fumbled the bag with her favorite general. Over at the Crystalline Palace, things are getting creepy. Mo Lee is chilling in his robes, dismissing his maids for the night. Snowball jumps onto his shoulder, and Mo asks if the ferret was giving Lawson a hard time again. He pets the little guy, noting that Snowball usually bites people to death if he doesn't like them. Mo jokes about giving the ferret to Lawson, but the ferret is no tea having it and shakes its head. Mo's smile turns dark as he declares he never lets anyone take what's his. Even if he doesn't want it anymore, his possessiveness is on another level. Suddenly, he hears footsteps and snaps at a maid who stayed behind. The maid stands there with a dark shadow over her eyes. She reminds him that it's time to feed the blood pest today. Mo tells her not to give him orders, reminding her he's the one who brought her back after a fake death. He orders her to drop the strange disguise she's wearing. The maid agrees, and her body starts to twist and writhe in a disgusting magical transformation. She reveals her true form. She's the assassin from the previous attempt who supposedly died. She asks when they're going to strike again, but Mo says there's no rush because the Empress is just Lawson's puppet. If they kill her now, the regent takes the throne, and he's much harder to handle. Mo watches her leave, calling her a traitorous dog. He pulls out a dagger, proving that our sweet childhood friend is definitely hiding some major villain energy. The ultimate winner is finally emerging from the shadows. A creepy white snake slithers out of its pot, hissing like it's about to drop the most toxic diss track of the year. Snowball the ferret sees the snake and immediately thinks, finally some good food. But Mo Lee isn't having it. He grabs the fuzzy menace, reminding it that some things on the menu are strictly off limits. Mo reaches out to the serpent, which seems way too comfortable with him. The snake licks a fresh cut on his arm, probably sealing some dark shaman contract that definitely won't end well for anyone else. A guard announces that the Empress has arrived, catching Mo completely off guard. He tells them to hold up a second so he can clean up his literal and figurative mess before she walks in. But Pearl is too fast, barging in and asking if her chaotic ferret has made its whack yet. She freezes the moment she sees him, and her face turns a shade of red that would put a tomato to shame. Mo is chilling behind some sheer curtains, looking like he's posing for a spicy historical calendar. He's barely wearing a robe, giving Pearl a full view of the goods she wasn't prepared to see. Internally, she's probably short-circuiting, wondering why her childhood friend suddenly turned into a top-tier thirst trap. She stammers out, "What are you doing?" while trying to maintain some level of royal dignity. Mo plays it cool, teasing her by asking if she's visiting his bed at such a late hour. Pearl immediately denies it, waving her hands like she's trying to swat away the awkwardness. She explains that Lawson was chasing Snowball earlier, and she just wanted to check if the ferret was safe. She asks where the little guy is, still blushing like crazy. Right on cue, Snowball zooms past her like a white blur, nearly knocking her over. Pearl loses her balance and starts falling forward into the danger zone. Mo catches her, pinning her against the wall in a classic Kabidon move that would make any romance fan scream. They are way too close now, and the tension in the room is thick enough to cut with a sword. It's a total protagonist accidentally scores a win moment. Mo whispers that he's here as a tribute to her, leaning into the submissive but dangerous act. He looks at her with those trust me eyes that have villain written all over them in 4K. Pearl isn't falling for the self-deprecation, telling him she won't let him talk down about himself like that. She admits she doesn't know what happened to him during their years apart, but to her, he's still the most special person in her heart, which is basically the biggest green light Mo could ask for. Mo smiles, telling her she hasn't changed a bit, and honestly, her naivety is his biggest weapon weapon. This triggers a flashback to the day they were separated as kids. Tiny Pearl was a total mess, sobbing and begging him not to leave her behind. Tiny Mo promised they would meet again, looking way too calm for a kid getting shipped off. Pearl called him a liar through her tears, not believing a word of it. To prove his point, Mo told her to close her eyes so they could make a special promise. She did exactly what she was told, trusting him even back then. He leaned in and gave her a forehead kiss, which was actually a sneaky way to plant a spell. He explained it was a Quivel spell, basically marking her as his. He eventually walked away, leaving the little girl standing alone in the snow. Tiny Pearl reached out, watching her only friend disappear into the distance. Back in the present, Mo asks if she remembers that day. He tells her how glad he is to see her again, leaning in with that same predatory grace. He asks her to close her eyes for him one more time, and Pearl is totally under his spell. She closes them, expecting something romantic, while the audience is screaming, "Don't do it!" He kisses her forehead again, looking like the perfect, devoted consort. Pearl is absolutely melting, thinking she's found her soulmate. Meanwhile, that creepy snake is literally wrapped around his arm while he does it. He glares at the reader over her shoulder, basically confirming he's the final boss of this drama. He promises he'll never leave her again, which sounds sweet but is actually a total threat. Pearl is hyped, holding his hands and thinking everything is finally going her way. But then she notices the scars on his arm and asks what happened to him. Mo plays the pity card, admitting he did it to himself during his dark times. He asks if she finds him disgusting, knowing damn well she's too kind to say yes. Pearl pulls him into a hug, quoting her master about how people who self-harm are just ill and need help. Internally, she's heartbroken, thinking about how much he must suffered. She vows to love and protect him, telling him to come to her whenever he's feeling down. She begs him not to hurt himself anymore, saying her heart aches just looking at the scars. Mo hugs her back, but his face is stone cold. Internally, he's scoffing, thinking about how everyone who promised to love him eventually lied. Meanwhile, over at the Lake Island Pavilion, the vibe is way more serious. General Eric is playing a high-stakes game of Go against the mysterious white-haired lord. Eric isn't sugarcoating anything, calling Mo a poisonous snake waiting to pounce on the Empress. The lord stays cryptic, saying fortune and misfortune come from the same well. He places a piece on the board, suggesting that Mo might actually surprise them. Apparently, Mo becoming one of Pearl's companions was written in the stars all along. Eric looks like he wants to flip the table, not buying this destiny nonsense for a second. The lord reminds Eric that he brought him into the palace to guard the princess, yet Eric secretly helped the soul from another world Pearl take over. Eric asks if the original princess, Celestia, only existed to give birth to this new version of Pearl. The lord coldly states that it was her destiny, and there's no use arguing with the heavens. He explains that the stars governing their fates are fixed and never waver. However, Pearl's star is the wild card, has the power to change the entire track of the world. Eric slams a piece down, declaring that he doesn't believe in fate and will protect Pearl his own way. He notes that the lord hasn't aged a single day in the 20 years he's known him. Rumor has it the Yun family are actual immortals, and looking at this guy, it's hard to disagree. The lord just sighs, saying he left the past in the past a long time ago. He tells Eric he lost the game, walking away like a boss while leaving the general fuming. The night is quiet, but the political storm is just getting started. Eric watches him leave, thinking that people's hearts aren't as predictable as the stars. The lord returns to his massive, glowing palace, where his servants welcome him back. The place is decked out with glowing lotuses and looks like a literal heaven on earth. He announces he's going to meditate to train his powers and orders everyone to clear out. He adds a "disturb me and you die" warning just to make sure he gets his beauty sleep in peace. Back on the roof, Pearl is staring at the moon, still worried about Mo's mental state. Internally, she sighs, "I wish I'd help him more, cause she's too pure for this world." She starts wandering around the massive palace grounds and realizes she's totally lost. She stumbles upon the lord's hidden pavilion and is blown away by how beautiful it is. She figures an immortal must live there and decides to investigate because curiosity is her middle name. She peeks through the massive doors, looking like a total spy. She sees the white-haired lord sitting in the middle of a glowing circle, looking incredibly peaceful. He's so still that Pearl genuinely thinks she's found a masterpiece. She walks up to him amazed that a statue could look this realistic and handsome. She starts touching his face, commenting on how lifelike the carving is. Internally, the lord is screaming at her to remain still because she's ruining his meditation flow. Pearl decides she wants to move the statue to her room to use as a cooling body pillow for the summer. The lord can't take the distraction anymore and suffers a massive magical backlash, coughing up blood. Pearl leaves but realizes later she dropped her jade thumb ring back at the statue room. She rushes back, worried that Lawson will have a literal heart attack if she loses his gift. She finds the ring, but then she notices something terrifying. The giant statue is gone, and she thinks someone must have stolen her new body pillow. Then she spots a small figure lying on the floor behind a pillar. It's a tiny, white-haired boy who looks exactly like the lord, but shrunk down to fun size. Pearl picks him up, asking his name and why he's all alone in this scary place. The kid just stares at her with deadpan eyes, clearly not in the mood for her nonsense. Internally, Pearl starts spiraling, wondering if he's mute or if his parents abandoned him. She gets all fired up about irresponsible parents and tells him she's taking him out of there. The kid stares at her with a look that says, "I object," but Pearl is already planning his adoption. Night falls over the Peace Palace as Pearl rolls up with her mysterious new house guest. The maids are instantly obsessed with the gorgeous kid, begging for a turn to hold him. Pearl keeps him close, sensing he's a bit overwhelmed by the sudden attention. She lies through her teeth, claiming he was just an abandoned stray she decided to foster until his family shows up. Internally, she's just trying to figure out the logistics, asking for child-sized clothes so she can get him cleaned up. Since the only other kid in the palace is Prince Joe, getting a fresh fit is going to take a while. Pearl decides he'll just have to rock her oversized robes for the night while the hot water gets prepped. The steam fills the room as the bath is finally ready for the tiny lord. It's a top-tier setup, but the guest of honor looks like he'd rather be literally anywhere else. He stands there with a blank stare, looking like a pint-sized version of an ancient deity. Pearl tells him to hold still so she can get the scrubbing started. She tries to help him undress, but things get weird fast. No matter how hard she tugs, those clothes aren't budging an inch. It's like the fabric is glued to his skin with some high-level immortal magic. She goes full berserker mode trying to rip them off, but it's a total fail. Exhausted and defeated, she throws in the towel and tells him he can keep his secrets. She settles for a head pat instead, promising to leave his wardrobe alone for now. Pearl starts wondering if this is what peak motherhood feels like. She tells the kid he's crashing with her tonight, but he'll get his own bed tomorrow. Once they hit the hay, the little guy tries his best to maintain a social distance. He stares at the ceiling, probably questioning all his life choices that led to this. Suddenly, a hand reaches out from the darkness. Pearl drags him into a bear hug, deciding he's her new high-quality cooling pillow. The tiny immortal tries to stay stoic, but realizes it's absolutely useless against her grip. The sun comes up and Pearl is already at a level 10 energy, while the kid looks like he hasn't slept a wink. He's giving off major don't talk to me vibes, and Pearl realizes he's definitely not a morning person. A maid arrives to help Pearl get dressed and drops some tea. The strategic advisor has vanished, and the regent is on a manhunt. Pearl realizes she's never even met this guy and asks if he's actually a big deal. The maid gushes that the advisor is basically the Empire's guardian angel. Apparently, he's the reason they've had 2 centuries of peace. Pearl thinks he sounds like a total scam artist, but the maid warns her that people who talk trash about him usually end up dead by sunrise. It turns out the citizens are so protective they'll literally delete anyone who offends him. Pearl decides she'll be on her best behavior to avoid the mob, but when she hears the regent is coming, she panics and tries to hide the evidence of her kidnapping. General Eric steps into the room before she can even blink. Pearl desperately shoves the kid behind her, trying to act natural. Eric stares her down, smelling the sus energy from a mile away. She strikes a bizarre pose, claiming she totally sprained her back this morning. He offers to call a doctor, but she quickly covers the kid and says she'll be fine. The tiny lord peeks out from the fabric, watching the drama unfold. Eric tells her to be careful, but he's clearly not buying the act. As Pearl tries to push the hidden kid further away, things get clumsy. A loud thump echoes through the room, and Pearl lies that it was just a falling blanket. Once the final boss finally exits, she can finally breathe again. Pearl checks on the kid, who is back to his usual intense staring. She looks at his cold expression and realizes he looks exactly like the regent. A light bulb goes off in her head as she notices the spitting image. She concludes that the search for the advisor was just a cover. Eric was actually looking for his secret son. She hugs him tight, feeling bad that he has such a stony-faced dad. Internally, she's ready to throw hands with the regent for being a mid-tier father. When the maid brings washing supplies, Pearl decides to handle the toddler duties herself. She whips out a toothbrush, ready to tackle those pearly whites. She tells him to open wide, but he's not having it. After a bit of a struggle, she lifts his chin to get to work. He's fuming as she scrubs away, swearing he'll remember this disrespect. Next, she aggressively wipes his face like he's a messy toddler. The little guy looks completely helpless and dead inside. Breakfast is served, and it's a surprisingly modest spread of eggs and porridge. The kid is shocked at how simply the Empress eats. Pearl explains that she cut back on the waste because nutrition is the only thing that matters. She offers him some sesame paste, promising it's fire despite the gray look. When he refuses, she gives him that don't make me do this the hard way look. He finally gives in and takes a bite. He's surprised to find it's a perfect mix of sweet and bitter. He can actually taste the high-quality flavor profile. Pearl reminisces about her old master who used to make this as a rare treat. She remembers only getting to eat it once or twice a year. Even though her master was toxic, she realizes she actually misses the old days. The kid suddenly speaks up, telling her that suffering builds character. Pearl is shook that he's talking and smothers him with a kiss. She leaves a big smudge on his cheek, making him look even more annoyed. She laughs it off, telling him he finally looks like a normal kid. Later, they head to the Imperial Garden where the flowers are in full bloom. Prince Joe spots them and comes running over. Joe immediately gets defensive, asking who the new guy is. Pearl tries to introduce them, but the tiny lord stays silent. Joe assumes he's a mute and starts acting smug. Pearl shuts that down real quick with a swift knock to Joe's head. She warns Joe that if he bullies the new kid, he's getting double the punishment. She hopes they'll become besties since they're the same age. As soon as she turns her back, Joe starts claiming his territory as the favorite sibling. Joe grabs the kid's sleeve, looking for trouble. He thinks he can get away with a little bullying as long as Pearl isn't looking. He gets a devious look on his face, planning a prank. He shows the kid a giant beetle, hoping to make him scream, but the tiny lord just stares at it, completely unfazed. Joe is confused why his master plan is failing. Suddenly, a whole swarm of bugs appears out of nowhere and attacks Joe. Joe loses his mind and screams that he's going back to the palace. He runs for his life while the bugs continue to chase him down. Night falls over the Peace Palace as the moon hangs high in the sky. Inside, everything is quiet and still, but the shrunken lord isn't staying small tonight. A mysterious glow begins to emanate from his body as his small hands transform back into their powerful adult form. He looks down at his restored self with a stoic expression, his signature necklace shimmering in the moonlight. Pearl suddenly lets out a huge yawn, waking up to find a literal supermodel Tierman in her bed. They lock eyes in the dim light, and as she reaches out to touch his shoulder, a wave of realization hits her. Internally, she panicked. Wait, this definitely isn't a child anymore. A massive scream echoes through the palace grounds. The maids burst in, absolutely blindsided by what they're seeing. Pearl is caught in 4K, desperately tugging at the man's robes while he just lays there like a boss. The maids are short-circuiting, realizing the missing strategic advisor has been hiding in the Empress's bed this whole time. Pearl looks back, totally confused about why they're calling this hunk an advisor. She tries to point out it's not what it looks like, while the maids beg for mercy from the high-ranking official. Internally, she sobbed. Would they even believe me if I said he just snuck in here? Even in this chaos, she can't help but notice he's absolutely stunning. She starts sweating, wondering if she's accidentally offended a major power player by treating him like a toddler. But the advisor isn't about to let this scandal go viral. He charges up a golden spell, casting a massive memory erasure hex on everyone in the room. A blinding light fills the chamber as he grabs Pearl, locking her in a trance as the magic takes hold. Her eyes glaze over as her memories of the night are scrubbed clean. He catches her as she falls unconscious, holding her one last time before disappearing. The next morning, the advisor is back to his stoic self, staring out from his own quarters. Back at the palace, Pearl wakes up and immediately asks where the kid went. She describes the beautiful, quiet boy she found, but the maids look at her like she's lost it, claiming she's always returned alone and there was never a child. Pearl is left scratching her head, knowing she definitely didn't dream that kid. High up in the clouds, the advisor's estate is as peaceful as ever. A servant brings him a fancy breakfast on a tray, but he looks completely uninterested in the high-end spread. With a wave of his hand, he tells them to take it all away. When the servant asks if there's anything else he wants, he nearly asks for the sesame pass Pearl used to feed him. He looks down at his necklace and decides to just stick with some basic lotus seed porridge. As he takes a sip, he can't stop thinking about the time Pearl force-fed him like a baby. He touches his collar, clearly missing the chaotic energy of the Empress. Meanwhile, at the throne palace, it's time for some high-stakes diplomacy. Envoys from the 4 major empires have arrived to congratulate Pearl on her coronation. Her advisor warns her that these neighbors are all low-key trying to dominate the Chen Empire, so she needs to stay sharp. Pearl sits on her throne, looking like a total girl boss in her red and black robes. First up is the envoy from the Mirror Empire, making a grand entrance. The representative bows politely, announcing that their emperor has sent a special gift. It's the gown of moonlit clouds, a piece of high-fashion art. It's made of rare ice silk and draped in expensive pearls, with gems sourced from all over the world. The court is absolutely floored by the flex. The envoy smirks, thinking Pearl is just a superficial fool who will waste the empire's money on more luxury. Their plan is to leave the Chen Empire penniless, and the people angry by getting the Empress addicted to shopping. But Pearl isn't playing their game. She coolly orders her maids to take the dress apart. The envoy is shook, asking her to reconsider. Pearl points out that since it's her gift, she can do whatever she wants with it. She claims pearls and gems are just unwieldy and uncomfortable to wear, so she'd rather sell them to fund the national treasury instead. The envoy is left face down on the floor, realizing their plan completely backfired. Even the regent is impressed, praising her for resisting greed and indulgence. Pearl is internally screaming because she was actually trying to be a villain, but accidentally ended up being a great ruler. She decides to double down and try to make enemies of everyone else. Next, the Orphan Empire offers a 500-year-old secret moisturizing cream. The envoy presents the Peach Blossom formula, showing off the sparkly product. He claims no woman can refuse the temptation of top-tier skincare. Pearl suddenly stands up and shouts, "How dare you?" She stomps down the stairs, and with a dramatic smack, she accuses him of calling her ugly for needing moisturizer. The envoy is terrified, begging for forgiveness. She tells him to tell his emperor that this insult won't be forgotten. She kicks the cream away and storms off, unaware that the cream was actually laced with mind-rotting poison. The envoy is fuming, thinking her stupidity accidentally saved her life. He smirks, thinking the Chen Empire's days are numbered anyway with a mad empress. Finally, the Abyss Empire envoy arrives in a sparkly litter. Out steps a pink-haired hottie named Ken Yuan. He's a prince who humbly presents himself as a gift to the empress. Pearl is not amused, already feeling like she has too many royal consorts to deal with. Internally, she groaned. Who needs another professional troublemaker? She tells him to go home because they're at capacity. She tries to shoo him away, but Ken Yuan plays the love at first sight card, begging to stay even as a mere servant. Pearl looks him over and simply says, okay. The regent's face darkens instantly. The Abyss Empire guys are smirking, thinking their dashing prince has easily charmed her. They're convinced she's in for a deadly shock. Pearl announces that since he's so eager to stay, she'll allow it. Ken Yuan smiles, thinking he's in, but then Pearl points to the door and tells him to head to the outhouse. She tells him he's now officially in charge of cleaning every toilet in the palace. The court starts whispering about how cruel she is. They think the prince must have seriously offended her. Kenyuan's jaw drops in pure shock. He tries to play it off as a joke, but Pearl stone-faces him, saying she's just fulfilling his wish to be a servant. He gets dragged away by the guards, left completely speechless. Pearl prays that she's successfully offended 3 empires in one day. Poor Kenyuan ends up at the literal outhouses. The smell is so bad it's practically visible. He starts gagging immediately, wondering if she somehow knew he was actually an assassin sent to kill her. He tries to toughen up and stay regardless, but ends up barfing his guts out behind a bucket. Pearl is back on her golden throne, playing the part of the unbothered empress while her regent looks on. A new envoy from Quivel enters the room, but he's standing there completely empty-handed. The other diplomats are already sneering, convinced that this blatant insult is going to make Pearl lose her cool. Instead of throwing a tantrum, the envoy politely asks about the well-being of Prince Mo, claiming the emperor misses him dearly. Pearl, thinking of the kid she was fostering, lights up and promises they are taking excellent care of him. She even tells the envoy he should visit Mo later at the Crystalline Palace to share some news. The envoy is thrilled by the hospitality, but the rival diplomats are having a total system crash. Internally, the female envoy panicked. Quivel played us. She didn't want Prince Ken because she's already got the world's most beautiful man hidden in her palace. Over at the Crystalline Palace, the man formerly known as a toddler is calmly sipping tea. He pauses when the Quivel envoy waltzes in unannounced. The envoy assumes Mo is Pearl's new favorite toy, noting how lavishly the palace is decorated. Mo isn't in the mood for small talk and demands to know why he's there. The envoy immediately catches an attitude, barking that Mo needs to remember his place because he's not the emperor's favorite anymore. He claims even the lowest servant in Quivel could crush him like an ant, and demands Mo get on his knees to apologize for his tone. Mo just stares him down with a look of pure try-me energy. The envoy doubles down on the disrespect, reminding Mo that no matter where he is, he's still his mother's son. He reveals that Mo's mother is currently being kept in a rotting, abandoned corner of the Quivel Palace. Mo's expression remains cold, but the air in the room is getting heavy. Mo's pet ferret, Snowball, isn't about to let this slide and hisses at the intruder. Mo gently tells the little guy, not now, keeping his cool despite the insults. Snowball stomps off in a huff, finding Pearl taking a much-needed nap in a gazebo. She's vibing and humming a tune, finally happy to have a break from the diplomatic stress. Internally, she cheered. Good riddance to those annoying envoys. Suddenly, Snowball leaps onto her, and Pearl is completely blindsided by the fuzzy attack. The ferret starts squeaking his head off, and Pearl assumes Mo sent the little guy to fetch her for something important. She tells Snowball to slow down as she follows him back to the palace. Back inside the Crystalline Palace, the envoy is still screaming for Mo to kneel. He threatens to tell the emperor that Mo is badmouthing the Quivel Empire, leaving the choice to him. Mo remains stoic, but the envoy starts his final warning, unaware that the empress just walked in. Pearl catches him mid-sentence, looking like she's about to end this man's whole career. The envoy immediately starts stuttering, claiming she must have misheard everything. Pearl isn't buying the act and asks if he's really out here bullying one of hers. She orders the guards to remove the man from the palace immediately. The envoy gets the literal broom treatment, being beaten out of the room, while screaming that his emperor will hear about this. Pearl tells him to go right ahead and start a war if he wants to see who's really boss. Mo watches her walk away, looking oddly satisfied while holding his ferret. Pearl sticks her tongue out at the departing jerk, heading back to her garden. Later that evening, the remaining envoys are gossiping in the garden. One guy is convinced Pearl is as dumb as a doornail, and the other agrees she's just a silly goose. However, the female diplomat isn't so sure, pointing out that Pearl is the only one who has actually benefited from all this chaos. They all have a moment of silence when she reminds them that their gifts weren't exactly given out of the goodness of their hearts. They start wondering if the Empress is acting dumb on purpose, realizing that if that's the case, they are all in deep trouble. Just then, a servant rushes in to report that Pearl had the Quivel envoy forcibly driven out of the entire empire. The trio is left absolutely dumbstruck. They burst out laughing, deciding she's definitely just a fool after all, and they were overthinking it. Meanwhile, on the city outskirts, the Quivel envoy's party is making their way through the dark forest. A servant asks if they should stop for dinner, but the carriage remains silent. He peeks inside and lets out a scream when he sees His Excellency literally disintegrating into purple dust. The envoy gasps for help as he fades away, leaving nothing behind but a white snake slithering into the shadows. Back at the Crystalline Palace, a woman approaches Mo, warning him that he was way too rude to the envoy. She's worried about what will happen to Mo's mother if the emperor finds out. Mo coldly tells her that the man have the chance to report anything. She tries to play the "we're family" card, claiming she only wants to help her nephew and see her sister restored to the throne. Mo isn't buying the snake oil and tells her to leave him alone. She walks away, but immediately starts fuming, calling him a spoiled brat just like his mother. She's bitter that her sister became the empress while she had to serve, and she plans to keep Mo under her thumb as long as his mom stays imprisoned. She walks away with a sinister smirk. Mo is disgusted that she dared to mention his mother or their homeland. He remembers how his mom was stripped of her powers and thrown into a dungeon. The white snake returns to him, and he asks if the job is all done. He rewards the snake by letting it drink his own blood. Mo vows that one by one, every single person who hurt them is going to pay the price. The next day at the palace outhouse, Prince Ken is living a literal nightmare while scrubbing toilets. One of his subordinates finally snaps and quits, calling the work an outrageous insult to a noble prince. They all start complaining that the situation is absurd. Ken, who has clearly reached his limit, thwumps a wooden barrel onto one of their heads. The others tremble in fear, realizing their boss has finally lost it. Ken tosses his towel, but the smell of the outhouse is so bad he actually pukes. He orders them to put chamber pots on their heads and get out of his sight if they value their lives. Soon, a line of bucket-headed men is marching through the palace in formation. Reports of the bucket men reach the Peace Palace. Pearl's servant explains that these foreigners are wandering around with pots on their heads. Pearl realizes it must be Prince Ken and his squad. Internally, she smirked. Looks like I finally broke him. She tells her servant to inform Ken she wants to speak with him tomorrow. Meanwhile, Ken is desperately trying to scrub the smell of failure off in a hot bath. His servants are exhausted because he's asked for 10 water changes in a row. He's scrubbing his skin so hard it might actually come off, trying to wash away the trauma of being a royal toilet cleaner. Prince Ken is back in the bath, and he's clearly coping hard with his new life as a royal toilet scrubber. He reminds himself that his brother promised him a legendary sword if he actually manages to assassinate the Empress. This supposedly powerful weapon is the only thing keeping him from a total mental breakdown. Internally, he's already posing with the blade like a top-tier anime protagonist. His grand strategy involves getting intimate with Pearl to catch her off guard, which sounds more like a fanfiction plot than a hitman's mission. He vows to never give up, no matter how much psychological damage Pearl inflicts on him. He even gaslights himself into believing the chamber pot duty was just a test of resolve to see if he was worthy. He imagines Pearl's heart trembling once she realizes how far an abyss prince is willing to go for her. Meanwhile, his servants are watching him laugh like a maniac in the tub, convinced their prince has finally short-circuited. A messenger suddenly interrupts his delusions with word from the Empress. Ken's eyes literally turn into stars as he assumes his suffering has finally paid off. He jumps out of the tub, demanding his finest drip immediately. He's determined to look like a total snack for Her Majesty. However, when the servants bring the clothes, the lingering smell of his previous job hits him like a truck. He gags, ordering his squad to go bathe before they even think about touching his expensive robes. Finally, Ken gets into his floral abyss-style fit, which is a lot. He checks himself out, feeling like the main character of a romance manhwa. He's ready to show the Chen Empress what peak abyss masculinity looks like. He even promises his servants fat stacks of cash if they help him secure the bag. The servants are skeptical, wondering if the trauma gave him a new kink or if he's just lost his mind. Ken pivots to the duty card, claiming this is all for a marriage alliance between their empires. Internally, he knows he's talking absolute nonsense, but he's committed to the bit. The servants play along, calling him a hero while they hide their confusion. One servant mentions that Chen men are actually popular for having smooth, long hair. Ken realizes his hair game needs an upgrade to fit the local meta. The squad jumps in to help, looking way too enthusiastic about it. They start tugging on his hair to smooth it out, which looks more like a ritualistic sacrifice than a makeover. Ken is in literal pain while they explain that Chen men are delicate and have zero body hair. Ken thinks that sounds suspiciously like the girls back in Abyss. He tries to flex his chest hair as a sign of dominance, but his confidence is fading. Then the servant drops a massive truth bomb. Pearl's current favorite, the Prince of Quivel, is apparently smooth as a baby. Ken's heart sinks as he realizes competition is a literal K-pop idol. In a moment of madness, he starts plucking his own chest hair manually. He's sobbing from the pain almost immediately, realizing this hitman life is way harder than advertised. The servant finally mentions a hair removal method used by women that might be more efficient. Ken claims he's made of stronger stuff and tells them to start the procedure. They bring out the hot candle wax, and things are about to get spicy. They slather the wax all over his chest, and Ken is still trying to act tough. They press the strip down, and the tension is palpable. Then comes the rip, and Ken's soul practically leaves his body. He's suddenly reconsidering his entire worldview, realizing women are actually built different for handling this level of pain. He's genuinely impressed by their formidable nature while he fights back tears. The servant asks if they should keep going, and Ken decides to double down. He demands they continue the torture for the sake of the mission. The servants go all in, turning the prince into a human wax figure. The next day in the Imperial Garden, Pearl is enjoying the scenery. She's fully expecting Ken to show up and complain about his life like usual. Instead, she spots a sparkly figure in a rose-covered robe standing under the wisteria. The drip is so loud it's practically screaming. Pearl is genuinely confused, wondering where the prince went. Then Ken turns around with full-on blush, heavy makeup, and a rose tucked behind his ear. Pearl is absolutely blindsided, her brain failing to process this pink nightmare. She literally starts retreating as Ken approaches, shouting for him to stay back. She doesn't even recognize him under all that war paint. Ken winks and giggles, trying to act feminine based on the terrible intel he received. Pearl finally realizes it's him, and her soul just wants to exit the chat. Ken starts sashaying and tiptoeing toward her, looking like a total clown. He's convinced this Chen-style look is exactly what will get him into her good graces. Pearl's internal reaction is immediate, so not my type. She genuinely wonders if the toilet scrubbing finally pushed him over the edge into insanity. She actually feels a pang of guilt for breaking a royal prince's mind. She tells him he's officially off toilet duty, hoping that fixes him. Ken thinks his new look is a legendary success. He grabs her hands, getting way too close for comfort. He asks when he'll be summoned to her bedside, and Pearl's face says it all. She's screaming internally that this is way too much to handle. She shoves him away, asking if he's trying to scare her to death so he can take the throne. Ken panics, wondering if she's testing him or if his assassination plot was caught in 4K. He laughs it off with a nervous haha, claiming he'd never do such a thing. He starts hovering over her again, refusing to take the hint. He swears he'd die for her, which is ironic considering he was just planning her funeral. Pearl is left completely speechless by the sheer level of cringe. Back at the Peace Palace, news reaches Mo that the Empress is meeting with the Prince of Ebes. A maid offers to pass on a message, but Mo isn't having it. He decides to handle this personally, his jealousy clearly flaring up. He struts out of the palace, ready to reclaim his territory. He remembers how much Pearl liked his flute playing and decides to use that as his weapon. He imagines a high-tension, romantic hands-on teaching session with her. He's already picturing the close-up moments and the accidental physical contact. He even imagines a romantic kiss under the petals. He's basically fangirling over his own imagination while walking. Suddenly, he gets sniped in the head by a piece of fruit. He's furious, looking around for the culprit who ruined his main character moment. A white ermine is on the roof, squeaking at him like it's laughing. He calls it a filthy rat, but decides he has more important things to do than argue with a rodent. He finally arrives at the garden and spots Ken from a bridge. He scoffs at having yet another rival for Pearl's attention, but when he gets a good look at Ken's face, he freezes in shock. He sees Ken pestering the Empress and decides it's time to intervene. Mo goes full hero mode, telling Ken to unhand her while calling him a demon. He smacks Ken's hand away with his flute, making a dramatic entrance. Ken just laughs it off, calling Mo a pretty boy while flexing. Mo is visibly triggered by the audacity of this clown. Ken insults his scrawny limbs, asking if he even lifts, while Mo points out that Ken looks like a circus reject. The two start bickering right in front of Pearl, who is just done with both of them. Ken announces he's the future husband, and Mo realizes Ken is absolutely zero threat. He starts laughing, realizing he was worrying over nothing. Ken realizes this is Alvis Su, the top scholar, and his rage boils over. They immediately start throwing hands, or in Mo's case, throwing flutes. It's a total mess of smacks, thunks, and crashes as the garden gets wrecked. A 12th century vase gets caught in the crossfire and shatters. Then a 14th century pot gets smashed into pieces. Finally, Pearl's favorite crystal jade glass is destroyed. Pearl is devastated, literally crying over her expensive decor while they keep fighting. Mo stops for a second, promising to pay her back 10 times the amount for the damage. Pearl's mood immediately flips, her eyes turning into dollar signs as she realizes she's about to get paid. She watches them continue their brawl with a newfound interest in the profit margins. She even hands Mo a bonsai tree, telling him to use it to finish Ken off. Alvis is back at the Su mansion, but instead of a warm welcome, he's just trying to find a second apiece to read. He barely gets through a page before the silence is shattered. A girl named Vivi Nam waltzes in like she already owns the place, calling out his name with a fake sweet smile. She's carrying a tray and acting like the ultimate dutiful wife. She presents him with a bowl of sweet lotus seed soup she supposedly made herself. Vivi tells him to eat it before it gets cold, looking for some easy brownie points. Alvis isn't moved at all and coldly tells her to take it away. He reminds her that she isn't a servant and shouldn't be acting like one. Vivi pulls the "I just wanted to do something for you" card, looking like she's about to cry. Alvis doesn't budge, telling her to stop and think about her own reputation for once. The drama spikes when Alvis' father storms in, calling him a miserable wretch for his lack of manners. He drops a massive bomb, announcing that Vivi isn't just a guest, she's Alvis' fiancée. Alvis looks like his brain just short-circuited, because he clearly never agreed to this. His dad starts yapping about how Vivi's father saved his life, and now he's repaying the benevolence by auctioning off his son's freedom. Alvis hits back, pointing out that if he wanted to pay a debt, he could have just adopted her as a goddaughter instead of forcing a marriage. Dad isn't hearing it, claiming Vivi is a sweet angel. He even mentions she's a top-tier healer who cured Alvis's mother's chronic illness. Alvis admits he's grateful for the medical help, but he's still not marrying her. He officially rejects the engagement right then and there. Dad loses his cool and hurls a ceramic cup straight at Alvis's head. It's a direct hit and blood starts trickling down Alvis's face from a nasty cut. Vivi screams in horror, but Dad just turns his back, saying the boy needs to be taught a lesson. Vivi starts her Oscar-worthy performance, apologizing for getting between them. She literally flops onto the floor in a full kowtow. She cries about how the family fed and clothed her when she was a penniless orphan. She offers to live as a maid just to keep the peace, masterfully playing the victim. Dad falls for it instantly, telling her to get up. He asks Alvis if he's seriously choosing that idiot Empress over a perfect girl like Vivi. He declares that Vivi is the only daughter-in-law he'll ever recognize, basically disowning Alvis's choices. Alvis stands there bleeding, looking absolutely done with this toxic household. Dad bans him from leaving the grounds until he reaches the right answer. Alvis ignores him, goes to his desk and grips his brush. He begins writing a formal letter to Elena Chen. He tells her she might need to find a new teacher because he's caught in a family trap. He rolls up the letter, his expression hardening as he decides he won't change his mind. Suddenly, his grandfather enters the room. Alvis asks if he's there to nag him too, but grandfather actually shows some sympathy. He calls out Alvis's parents for being irresponsible losers who ditched him for 10 years to wander the world. Now they're back and only causing him more pain. Grandfather admits he isn't an old fool. He knows Vivi is a manipulative snake who has Alvis's parents wrapped around her finger. Alvis listens as the old man starts cooking up a plan. Grandfather decides he's going to make a request to the Empress herself. He wants her to allow Alvis to live in the palace permanently. He tells Alvis that when he leaves this time, he shouldn't look back. He's officially giving Alvis his blessing to ghost his parents forever. Internally, Alvis realized, who knew the palace would become my escape from marriage? Back at the palace, Alvis looks a little dazed by his new reality. Pearl spots him and screams, "Mr. Su!" With pure joy, she tackles him with a massive hug, shouting about how much she missed him. Alvis is completely flustered by the sudden physical affection. Pearl pulls back, apologizing for being so forward, but says she was just delighted to see him. They head to the Imperial study, where Pearl brags about finishing all her homework. Alvis checks her work and actually cracks a smile. Pearl admits she was worried he quit because she was too stupid to teach. Alvis gives her a gentle head pat, telling her not to be silly. She asks if he's staying for good this time, her eyes full of hope. Alvis's face falls as the weight of his situation hits him. Pearl immediately notices the vibe shift. She reaches up to touch his face, asking what's on his mind. She brushes his hair back and sees the nasty cut on his forehead. She gasps, asking where he got the injury. Alvis lies through his teeth, claiming he just bumped into something. Pearl isn't buying it for a second. That wound was clearly caused by something heavy being thrown. Internally, she narrowed her eyes. What does he hide? Later, Pearl is on a garden swing, wishing she had a spy to do some digging. Suddenly, someone pushes her swing from behind. It's Lawson, the world's richest merchant, looking as smug as ever. Pearl realizes he's the perfect person for the job since he has eyes and ears everywhere. Lawson smirks, playing it cool. She asks him to find out what really happened at the Sue mansion. Lawson's smile vanishes instant. He's annoyed because he absolutely hates Alvis. He's literally growling with jealousy. Pearl clasps her hands together, promising a reward if he helps. She adds a disclaimer. Anything except making you royal consort. Lawson sighs, reminding her that he let her off easy last time when she just drew his portrait. Pearl tries to take it back, but Lawson is obsessed. He claims he hung that portrait above his bed, so it's the first thing he sees every morning. He says it makes him even more eager to see her. He leans in close, making Pearl wonder if he's actually lost it. Lawson agrees to investigate, but on one condition. Since Alvis is staying for good, Lawson wants to live in the palace too. Pearl thinks it's a deal. Lawson gets tactical, demanding the palace nearest to hers. Pearl agrees as long as he delivers the tea. A few days later, Pearl is working in the Imperial study. Lawson bursts in, looking very pleased himself. He drops the bombshell. Alvis has a fiancé. Pearl is so blindsided she enters a state of total shock. Her hand stops moving, and a huge blot of ink drips onto her paper, ruining her work. She can't believe he never told her. Lawson spills all the tea about Alvis's eccentric parents and the marriage trap they set. He mentions that the Sue mansion is currently a dumpster fire of drama. Pearl asks if Alvis is being forced, and Lawson confirms he basically ran away to hide in the palace. Lawson calls Alvis a total coward for not facing his problems. Pearl snaps back, defending Alvis immediately. Lawson leans into his Mr. Steal Your Girl energy, calling the whole Sue family a mess. He points out that he, on the other hand, is single and scandal-free. Pearl hits him with deadpan, "Oh really?" Lawson sweats a bit and admits he hasn't even been to a brothel in a long time. He pivots back to the deal, asking where his new palace is. Pearl tells him the Golden Palace is the closest one to her. Lawson thinks the name is perfect and accepts. Pearl smiles, telling him she hopes he doesn't regret it. Lawson walks out to see his new home and is met with a literal humongous mountain. He stands there looking absolutely defeated. It turns out the Golden Palace is technically the closest as the crow flies, but there's a giant mountain in the way, meaning he has to travel all the way around it to see Pearl. Back in the study, Pearl celebrates her victory, knowing she just caught the world's richest merchant in 4K. Alvis is normally the cool, collected teacher, but today Pearl is about to see a side of him that's a total jump scare for her sanity. She looks at him and feels a wave of pity, thinking that with parents like his, he's basically an orphan just like her. Suddenly, she gets a light bulb moment and decides she knows exactly how to fix his mood. She starts working on a secret project, carefully tying wooden sticks together with red thread. She presses down on the paper frame, making sure the structure is solid before moving on to the next step. Grabbing a brush, she gets ready to add some personalized flair to her creation. While she's busy drawing, Alvis suddenly appears behind her, catching her in the middle of her DIY session. He's curious and asks why Her Majesty decided to skip her lessons for the day. Pearl spins around to face him, not even to hide her excitement. She proudly announces that she wants to go fly a kite with him. She gives him a beaming smile that could probably melt a glacier. Alvis looks at her and thinks she's still just a kid at heart after all. He decides to give her a pass and tells her she can have the day off, but it's back to the grind tomorrow. Pearl is hyped, calling him the absolute best for letting her play hooky. They head out to a lush green field under a clear blue sky to start their outdoor adventure. Pearl shows off her kite, looking like she's ready to win a world championship. Alvis takes a closer look at the weird doodles on the kite and asks what they're supposed to represent. Pearl explains that the three little ghosts are actually sorrow, anger, and worry. Alvis is momentarily stunned by the deep meaning behind her silly drawing. Without wasting another second, she launches the kite into the air, determined to see it fly. As the kite catches the breeze, Alvis watches her with a soft expression, clearly enjoying the view. Pearl shouts for him to look at how high it's going, looking like she hasn't a care in the world. The kite soars high above the trees, dancing among the birds. Alvis stands there, looking surprisingly peaceful for a guy with a mountain of family drama. Pearl decides he needs to get in on the action and tries to hand him the string. He hesitates, admitting that despite being a genius, he actually has no clue how to fly a kite. Pearl is blindsided, internally joking, And here I thought you were the human Wikipedia. She tells him not to sweat it because she's about to give him a masterclass. She stands close to him, guiding his hands on the spool to show him the ropes. She asks if he can feel the wind tugging at the string, trying to get him to feel the vibe. She's having the time of her life, totally unaware of the tension. Alvis, on the other hand, looks incredibly nervous being this close to her. Their hands overlap on the wooden spool in a moment that's pure fan service. Suddenly, the string slips and the spool goes flying out of his grip. They both watch as the kite is carried away by a massive gust of wind. Alvis immediately apologizes for the fumble, looking like a disappointed student. Pearl just puts a finger to her lips and tells him there's no need to apologize because she intended for it to fly away. Alvis is left buffering, not quite getting the logic yet. She explains that with the kite gone, all his sorrow, anger, and worry have been blown away too. Alvis finally realizes she did this whole elaborate setup just to cheer him up. Feeling a bit worn out from all the wholesome energy, Pearl suggests they head back to the palace. Later at the Peace Palace, Alvis waits patiently for Pearl to return. She walks in carrying a tray, announcing she made him some sweet rice dumpling soup. She tells him this is her go-to dessert whenever she's feeling down and insists he try it. She goes full caregiver mode and tells him to open up for a spoonful. Alvis takes the bite, looking a bit overwhelmed by the attention. He starts looking totally absent-minded, as if his brain just short-circuited. Pearl takes a bite herself, confirming the soup is top tier. She's vibing with the chewy texture while Alvis tries to process what's happening. She offers him another spoonful, but Alvis gets flustered about them sharing the same bowl. Pearl looks confused, wondering if he doesn't like it since she just wanted to share. Seeing how much effort she's putting in, Alvis decides he can't possibly say no. He lets her feed him again, accepting his fate with a smile. Before they know it, the bowl is completely empty. Pearl notices his face is getting super flushed and starts to worry. Alvis realizes too late that there might have been some special ingredients in that dessert. His face turns bright red as the realization hits that he's accidentally getting hammered. He starts losing the battle with gravity, looking completely dazed. Pearl asks what's wrong, not realizing she just served him a bowl of liquid courage. He leans his head on his hand, looking like he's about to pass out. Pearl reaches out and pokes his cheek to see if he's still awake. She realizes his face is burning up and wonders if he's actually drunk. Alvis is officially in another dimension, barely holding it together. Pearl thinks he looks adorable like this, internally screaming at the cuteness. She's so amused that she decides she needs to go grab her art supplies to capture this moment. As she tries to leave, Alvis suddenly grabs her arm and begs her not to go. He pulls her into a tight hug, refusing to let his anchor wander off. He clings to her like a baby, his usual cool exterior completely shattered. Pearl is stuck there, wondering what on earth happened to the stoic teacher. Alvis looks up with puppy dog eyes and begs his sister not to leave him. Pearl is shook, telling him she's not his sister, she's his student, Elena. Alvis isn't hearing it, accusing her of trying to trick him so she can abandon him again. Realizing he's completely gone, she decides to just play along for now. She gives him some gentle head pats, promising she won't leave him behind. He asks with a pout if she doesn't like him anymore. Pearl quickly reassures him that's definitely not the case. Then he drops a bombshell asking for a kiss to prove it. He gives her a cheeky, drunk smile that's 100% illegal. Pearl's heart starts doing gymnastics, and she tries to stay calm, telling him kissing isn't for everyone. Alvis calls her a liar, clearly not buying her excuses. He declares that if she won't kiss him, he'll just do it himself. He leans in and plants a big smooch right on her cheek. Pearl is internally screaming, trying to tell her heart to stop racing before it explodes. She's also terrified that Alvis is going to kill her the second he sobers up and realizes what happened. Alvis starts sniffling, convinced that his sister actually hates him. Pearl panics and starts wiping away his tears, promising she doesn't hate him at all. Internally, she's amazed at the power of alcohol, realizing he's a completely different person when he's wasted. She looks at him and realizes the drink turned the imperial teacher into a giant baby. Since he's clearly not coming back to reality anytime soon, she decides it's time to put him to bed. She starts guiding him toward the bed, quoting some old wisdom about early nights. Alvis stops her, insisting that he can't sleep until he's squeaky clean. Pearl is horrified, internally yelling, "He wants me to give him a bath?" She lies through her teeth, telling him he already had a bath and just forgot. She breathes a sigh of relief when he actually buys it, thanking her lucky stars for quick thinking. They stand by the bed, and she promises to stay by his side while he sleeps. He takes her hand, looking serious for a split second. Then he drops the ultimate request, asking her to sleep with him. Pearl is frozen in shock, but Alvis immediately starts faking a tantrum, saying he'll cry if she says no. To avoid a palace-wide scene, she ends up lying in bed with him, holding his hand. He grips her hand tightly, making sure she won't sneak away in the night. Pearl stares at him, suddenly remembering that this isn't the first time she's shared this bed with someone. She thinks back to a past life or a distant memory of cuddling a small, silver-haired child in this exact spot. The next morning, Alvis wakes up feeling like he was hit by a freight train. He looks around in a daze, realizing he somehow ended up in the Peace Palace. He tries to piece the night together, remembering the kite flying and the bowl of dessert Pearl gave him. It finally clicks that the dessert was actually a bowl of liquid courage, and he's been blacked out until now. Pearl walks in looking way too cheerful for someone dealing with a hungover man, carrying a bowl of red date porridge to settle his stomach. She offers it to him with a smile, but Alvis looks at the ball like it might contain another trap. Pearl laughs it off, promising him that this one is strictly non-alcoholic. Alvis, feeling the ultimate post-drinking shame, immediately bows and begs for forgiveness for whatever nonsense he pulled the night before. Pearl tells him to chill out because it was her fault for feeding him the spiked dessert in the first place. She explains that she even went to the kitchen early just to whip this up for him. She keeps pleading with him to eat, looking like the world's most adorable waitress. Alvis finally gives in and takes a sip, completely persuaded persuaded by her kindness. Pearl watches him, realizing he has absolutely no memory of his clingy behavior. Internally, she giggled. He was actually kind of a cutie when he was drunk. She hides her smirk behind her hand, enjoying the secret. She watches him eat, wondering if he'll ever find out how different he acts when he's tipsy. Alvis can feel her intense gaze boring into his soul and starts getting incredibly awkward. He finishes the bowl and sets it down with a definitive clink. Without wasting a second, he stands up to make a tactical retreat. Pearl tries to stop him, telling him there's no shame in a little weekend drinking. But Alvis is already halfway out the door, staggering away as fast as his legs can carry him. Meanwhile, outside the Peace Palace, Master Shay, also known as Lawson, is throwing a total tantrum at the guards. The guards aren't budging, claiming the Empress is still catching some Z's. Lawson isn't buying it, knowing Pearl is usually an early bird. Suddenly, the doors swing open and Alvis comes rushing out. Lawson's jaw drops as he screams, "Why are you coming out of her bedroom?" He starts doing a full-body inspection. Noting that Alvis is wearing yesterday's fit, his clothes are a wrinkled mess and his headpiece is sideways. Alvis realizes he looks like he just finished a walk of shame and tries to fix his hair. Lawson was just trying to annoy him, but seeing Alvis actually look flustered makes him panic. He stares at Alvis, wondering if the unthinkable actually happened. He loses it, screaming about what Alvis did to the Empress. Alvis just gives him a cold, none of your business stare. He reminds Lawson that the Empress can have whoever she wants over for a sleepover. This news hits Lawson like a physical blow, sending him into a dramatic spiral of despair. He starts sobbing like his favorite K-drama just got cancelled. But then the competitive spirit kicks back in. He decides he can't lose to a guy like Alvis. He warns Alvis not to get too comfortable just because of one night. Alvis brushes him off as a total weirdo. He walks away, leaving Lawson fuming in the dust. Back at the Sue mansion, a messenger hawk arrives with some tea. Vivi Nam receives the message and her eyes nearly pop out of her head. She reads the report that Alvis stayed overnight at the palace and instantly goes into villain mode. She can't believe the Empress is moving in on her target. Cut to the city streets, where a carriage is rolling through the crowd. Vivi decides to go full damsel in distress and dashes into the road. She forces the carriage to a screeching stop, begging for help. The guards are ready to throw hands for blocking the regent's path. Vivi drops to her knees, crying that the Empress stole her fiancé and is keeping him prisoner. She plays the victim perfectly, covering her face as she weeps. The surrounding crowd starts whispering, falling for the bait. Vivi keeps up the act, sniffing loudly to make sure everyone hears her heartbreak. The Prince Regent Eric finally steps out of the carriage looking completely unimpressed. He asks her point blank who the supposed fiancé is. Vivi looks up with teary eyes and drops Alvis's name. The two stand in the middle of the courtyard as Eric stares her down. He calls her out immediately, stating he already verified that Alvis is a single man. He warns her that slandering an official is a one-way ticket to a jail cell. Vivi doubles down, claiming the marriage was arranged by Alvis's parents and that Pearl is refusing to let him leave. She begs Eric to check her facts, looking like the world's most devoted bride-to-be. The crowd's gossip reaches a fever pitch, wondering if the Empress is actually a man-stealer. They figure Alvis is a catch, so maybe Pearl couldn't resist. Suddenly, Alvis's parents show up to join the circus, rushing to Vivi's side. The crowd watches as the family reunion happens in the middle of the street. Vivi acts surprised to see them, asking what they're doing there. His mother squeezes her hands, acting like Vivi is already her daughter-in-law. She then has the audacity to tell the regent that it's unseemly for an empress to want a betrothed man. Eric's patience hits zero. He orders his guards to arrest them on the spot for being suspicious and insulting the crown. The parents go from smug to panicked real quick. Just as the guards move in, a voice calls out for mercy. It's Minister Sue Alvis's grandfather, bowing low. Eric asks the minister if these clowns belong to him and why they're causing a scene. The minister throws his own son under the bus, clarifying that Alvis is not engaged and it was all just his son's wishful thinking. He turns to his son and yells at him to get on his knees. The minister then takes full responsibility for the mess and resigns from his position as an apology. His son is shocked, but the minister is done with the drama. The crowd is stunned that the prime minister just quit over this. Internally, the minister fumed. My family is doomed because these idiots tried to pick a fight with the regent. Eric tells him to go home and discipline his people before things get worse. Vivi, seeing her plan crumble, tries one last desperate move. She plays the martyr card, saying she'll accept her fate if the Empress really wants Alvis. She drops the bombshell that Alvis is actually the Empress' teacher, questioning how a student could turn her teacher into a royal consort. The crowd loses their minds over the scandalous teacher-student trope. They start calling the Empress outrageous for stealing a man and breaking social taboos. Eric realizes this was a calculated trap to ruin Pearl's reputation. He looks at Vivi, realizing she's way more dangerous than she looks. Vivi keeps the drama going, wailing about Alvis' shame. She then does a dramatic dash toward a wall. She knocks herself out for the ultimate sympathy points, leaving everyone horrified. Later, the news spreads like wildfire through the city. At a tea house, people are talking about how devoted Vivi is and how the Empress must have used force to get Alvis. Sitting at a nearby table is a man in red, looking like he's about to explode. It's Eric, and he's ready to go over there and start a riot. Pearl, sitting with him incognito, reaches out to stop him. Eric is fuming, wanting to teach the gossips a lesson. Pearl remains calm, telling him to just let them talk. Eric is confused why she isn't angry about the malicious rumors. Pearl takes a bite of her snack and drops some deep wisdom about how silencing people is more dangerous than letting them talk. Eric stares at her, stunned by her maturity. He smiles, impressed by her perspective, and apologizes for being short-sighted. Pearl credits her master master for teaching her well. When Eric asks if she means Alvis, she looks away sadly, revealing that her true master is no longer in this world. Pearl and Eric are out hitting the streets incognito, but the vibes are definitely off. They end up walking past a father and daughter having a little chat. Pearl listens in as the kid starts talking about her future. The little girl mentions she wants a guy named Mr. Liu to be her teacher because he's the most handsome. Her dad immediately shuts that down, telling her not to be like that shameful empress. Pearl is left standing there, getting absolutely roasted by a random citizen in broad daylight. Eric's blood is boiling at disrespect. He clenches his fist, looking like he's ready to throw hands for his lady. But Pearl is one step ahead, grabbing his hand to keep him from blowing their cover. He looks at her, surprised that she isn't more upset. Pearl just gives him a soft, knowing smile. She tells him to relax and just enjoy the fact that they actually managed to sneak out of the palace. She drags him along, mentioning a famous tea house called Tea on the Water. Passersby are completely blindsided, wondering why two men are holding hands in public. Despite the awkward looks, Pearl stays focused on the fun. They grab a table on a boat tea house with a top-tier view. Pearl starts inhaling the snacks, calling them legendary. Eric suddenly tells her to hold still. Pearl is confused, wondering if there's a bug or something. He reaches out with a steady hand and wipes a crumb off her face like a total gentleman. Pearl is instantly flustered, her face turning bright red. Internally, she's screaming, "Look in the mirror, buddy. Don't you dare make fun of me." Eric then slides his own plate of cakes over her. He tells her she can have his portion since he hasn't touched it yet. Pearl thinks he's being way too sweet, stuffing her face while gushing over him. She gets a little dazed just staring at him. Naturally, she starts choking on her food immediately after. She grabs the nearest cup and chugs the tea to save her life. Eric casually mentions that she just drank from the cup he was using. Panicking, she tries to offer him her cup as a trade. Eric is just left speechless by the unintentional indirect kiss. The mood is ruined when they overhear the table next to them gossiping. The citizens are trashing Pearl, claiming she stole Alvis from Vivi and is forcing to be her consort. They're confused by the Su family's drama, but decided that the Empress is definitely the villain. Suddenly, a bookie calls out for a fresh round of betting. They're taking bets on who wins the man, Vivi Nam or the Empress. The odds are a disrespectful 20-1 in Vivi's favor. Everyone starts throwing their silvers down on Vivi, convinced the Empress taking an L. Pearl's eyes go dark as she realizes the whole city is betting against her. She stands up and slams her hand on the table, done with the disrespect. Eric looks on, sensing a massive bill coming his way. Pearl drops a massive gold it onto the table. The dealer is stunned by the sudden flex. Pearl loudly declares she's putting it all on the Empress. Eric is caught in 4K wondering why she's being so extra. The crowd laughs at her, calling her a fool for throwing money away. The gossipers think they're making easy money with their eyes closed. They're convinced Alvis Su would never actually succumb to the Empress' charms. Pearl goes back to her tea, acting like she didn't just drop a fortune. Eric asks if she truly plans on making Alvis a royal consort. Pearl nearly spits her tea out in shock. She tells him of course not. She explains that Alvis only entered the palace to avoid an unwanted marriage his parents were pushing. She leans in to tell Eric a secret. She claims she's just doing her duty as a student to help him out. Eric notes that she seems suspiciously familiar with the Su family's private business. Pearl tries to deflect, saying she heard it from Lawson. She gives him a cheeky look, realizing she needs to pivot. She gets close and admits that she does want a royal consort. Specifically, she tells him that he's the only one she wants. Eric tries to play it off as a joke, but Pearl is satisfied that she successfully changed the subject. Internally, she scoffs. He gets shy so easily, it makes me want to tease him more. Eric's face is visibly flushed as he tries to stay composed. Pearl keeps the pressure on, asking if he's feeling hot. She offers him more tea to cool down. He gulps it down, only for her to reveal it was her cup again. He's totally short-circuiting as she offers him the other cup. He takes another sip, trying to recover. Pearl watches him with a mischievous glint in her eye. Then she reveals that she actually gave him the right cup the first time and just wanted to see him panic. Eric freezes mid-sip. He finally begs her to stop teasing him before he loses it. They eventually head back to the palace, with Pearl still trying to apologize for being a menace. She promises to stop the teasing for the day, but their fun is cut short when they run into the high-ranking regent. Pearl is immediately caught off guard by his presence. The regent demands an explanation for a commoner attire. Eric steps in, lying through his teeth that they were out on an undercover investigation. Pearl is internally thanking her lucky stars for his quick thinking. The regent isn't buying it and asks what this investigation revealed. Eric reports that the rumors about the Empress and the Su family are spreading like wildfire. The regent's solution is to arrest everyone slandering her name to set an example. Pearl immediately puts her foot down, saying she won't allow a mass arrest. The regent argues that a ruler needs to use a firm hand to keep order. Pearl counters that they can't possibly round up every single person who talks trash. She explains that arresting them doesn't solve the fundamental issue of her reputation. She declares she has a much better solution to quell the rumors without turning the citizens against her. The two men can only stand there, wondering what kind of big brain play she has up her sleeve.